In a world defined by peril and promise, great mazes await adventurers, offering challenges from crumbling ruins to grand, imposing structures. Those who enter a black hole, a portal to this other world, and survive are said to be rewarded with immense wealth and superhuman strength. Before one such swirling vortex stands a lone figure, ready to face the unknown. Deep within the backlad maze, on the 38th floor, that same adventurer stands victorious over the hulking, defeated boss of the level. The great beast lies still upon the cold stone floor. The adventurer, Lekin, also known as the One-Eyed Wolf, adjusts his collar, his expression calm. His hand rests near the hilt of a knife strapped to his leg, ever ready. His companion, the burly adventurer Ballad, the man-eating bear, praises him for the fast victory. He compliments Lekin's perfect coordination, stating that once an opening was created, the rest was easy. As Ballad offers to handle such tasks, a third-party member, a young man with white hair, suddenly calls for them to wait. Using his life sensor ability, he questions whether the creature is truly dead. He then focuses his power, employing a 3D object sensor to conduct a more thorough scan of the fallen monster's body. After the scan, Ballad turns to Lekin and asks if there's any abnormality. Lekin confirms there is none. Ballad's attention then shifts, and, pointing elsewhere, he asks what that new phenomenon is. Before them, a swirling black vortex has materialized in the center of the boss room. Both Lekin and Ballad can only stare as the unstable portal churns, an exact replica of the black hole that brought them to this world. He stared at the swirling anomaly, his eyes narrowing as he identified it. Beside him, Ballad let out a gasp of disbelief, recognizing the phenomenon as a black hole. Ballad turned to Lekin, asking what he planned to do. He explained that no one knows what happens upon entering a black hole, and that this was the first time such a thing had ever occurred. Even with his own powers, the interior was hazy and impossible to perceive. In response, Lekin simply declared that they were adventurers through and through. Ballad erupted in a hearty laugh, agreeing that there was no room for hesitation. Their decision made, they were instantly pulled into the void. Lekin cried out as they were sent tumbling through an endless darkness, the sensation of falling overwhelming him before he grunted from the disorienting force. Their forms distorted as they plunged through the black abyss. The scene then shifted, revealing a large, unfamiliar structure nestled within a dense forest. The transition settled on a view of the sky above the forest canopy, with leaves drifting gently on the wind. Lekin lay motionless in a patch of tall grass, having landed hard at the edge of the woods. He groaned, slowly pushing himself up. His face was a mask of dazed confusion as he tried to regain his bearings. Now on his feet, he called out for his companion, shouting Ballad's name. He wondered aloud how long he could have been asleep, finding it strange since he usually wakes at the slightest noise. With no answer and no sign of his friend, Lekin began to walk through the unfamiliar, sun-dappled woods, his search underway. He stood amidst unfamiliar, dense vegetation, realizing this was the world beyond the black hole. Though he had traveled through various places, he had never seen flora like this. He scanned the area, but the portal they had passed through was nowhere to be found. The forest stretched out before him, a dark and imposing wilderness under a black sky. Elsewhere, another traveler, Blue, stood in a void of darkness, concentrating as he activated his own life sensor ability, sending out waves of perception. Lekin, meanwhile, found it strange. The response of life he was sensing was far too weak. He knew he should be able to perceive animals clearly, but there was almost nothing. He focused his life sensor, noting that normal animals appeared as green dots and humans as red. Seeing no red, he concluded that Ballad must have been transported to a different place, perhaps even another world. All he could detect was a single, very weak green response. At the same time, Blue's own perception began to increase slightly, his sensory range extending to 1,000 feet from his position. His senses then locked onto a powerful signal, one he perceived as Blue. A sudden jolt of alarm went through him. He decided he had to ensure his own safety first before he could worry about Ballad. The source of that blue life force was a monstrous magical beast. Lekin, too, felt this presence through his own life sensor, and understood instantly that this was no normal being. Reacting to the imminent threat, he confirmed his storage ability was still functional and that his items were safe. Without hesitation, he drew his longsword. He held the blade ready, his expression hardening as he prepared to confront the unseen magical beast. He holds his ground as the source of the powerful life signal reveals itself. A monstrous, boar-like beast with enormous tusks. It charges directly toward him, clearly viewing him as prey. In a blur of motion, he sidesteps the beast's charge and drives his sword deep into its thick neck, halting its rampage. As the beast lies slain at his feet, he observes it more closely. He notes that while it is a species he has never seen before, it is still a magical beast. This confirms for him that he should be able to absorb its power. Suddenly, the creature's flesh sizzles and evaporates, dissolving away in moments to leave only a bleached skull and bones behind. He remains vigilant, sword at the ready, watching the strange phenomenon. The bones themselves then crumble into dust, which is swept away by the wind, leaving no trace of the massive creature that stood there moments before. He He processes what he has witnessed, confirming a crucial fact. Just as in his own world, he can use magical power absorption to steal magic. He recalls that unlike normal beasts, magical beasts have magic stones located in a position symmetrical to their hearts. This realization brings a wave of confidence as he clenches his fist. He can do it. Even in this unfamiliar world, he has the means to fight. He acknowledges the uncertainty of his new environment, admitting he doesn't know what he'll be able to acquire here. Nevertheless, he resolves to test the full extent of his powers. His immediate priorities become clear. First, he needs to find food and water. He glances at the spot where the beast vanished, musing that it would be good if he could eat the local fauna. Just as he begins to formulate a plan, a distant scream cuts through the air. His head snaps up, his senses instantly on high alert. It was a girl's voice, and he needs to know where it came from. He stood atop the hill, realizing his need for information. He had yet to make any contact with the people of this world. Focusing his senses, he perceived two distinct points of life, humans. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. Based on the sound he'd heard, he had expected them to be much farther away. The reason for their distress became terrifyingly clear. Two monstrous, boar-like creatures were relentlessly ramming a carriage, splintering its frame. From within the wreckage, a long-haired man peered out in shock and desperation as the vehicle was torn apart. Deep within a dense forest, Lekin leaps silently through the canopy, observing the scene below. On the path, an armored swordsman on horseback notes that while they've shaken off one pursuing demon, another still follows. Lekin watches them, his expression grim. He lands softly, concealing himself behind the trunk of a massive tree. From this vantage point, he peers out at a carriage that has come to a stop further down the path. His gaze remains fixed on the strange procession as he internally questions the meaning of it all. The presence of horses in a carriage implies that people must be inside. The focus shifts back to the armored swordsman, now dismounted and facing a new threat, a monstrous, boar-like creature charging directly at him with ferocious intent. From his hiding spot, Lekin extends his senses. He perceives the world as traces of magical power, noting that all living things possess it and should be detectable by his life sensor ability. He can sense the horse, and more importantly, two distinct human magical signatures emanating from within the carriage. Meanwhile, the armored swordsman considers the strange situation. He wonders if a skill exists in this world to avoid life sensor, because the man beside him, Isaac, feels like nothing. He realizes there are 4 males present, all of whom lack any magical power. He concludes they must be imposters who only look human. The boar's attack connects with brutal force, sending the swordsman flying from his horse. He crashes to the ground, his face a mask of shock as the beast closes in. Before the monster can land a final blow, a massive fireball erupts from his side, engulfing the creature's head in searing flames and bringing the carriage to a screeching halt. The source of the spell is revealed. A young woman with long, flowing hair stands in the open doorway of the carriage, her hand outstretched. From the trees, Lekin watches the scene unfold, recognizing the powerful attack as fire magic. He watches as the giant boar, now scorched by black flames, stumbles in agony. From the carriage doorway, the fire mage observes the effect of her spell, while her armored guard stares in disbelief at the scene. Lekin's own gaze remains sharp, analyzing the chaos. He springs from his hiding place, drawing his sword as he closes the distance to the wounded beast. The boar, still reeling from the magical assault, has yet to notice his swift approach. He brings his blade down in a powerful arc, cleanly severing the boar's remaining foreleg. The beast lets out a pained growl as it collapses heavily to the ground. From the side, the armored swordsman and the mage watch, stunned by his sudden appearance and decisive action. He lands softly, his attention fixed on the now crippled boar as it snorts in fury. He reflects internally that while he finished its leg off in one strike, it would have been disastrous if the creature had collided with the carriage at its full, charging force. He notes that even with a leg missing, the beast still possesses immense charging power. He deduces that the thick fur, fat, and skin between its neck and back provide formidable protection, leaving only one viable option for a single strike kill, an upward thrust from the throat. With his strategy set, he roars a defiant, however, and lunges forward, ducking low to get beneath the beast's massive head and expose its vulnerable underside. In a flash of violent motion, he drives his sword upward, deep into the boar's throat. The blade sinks to the hilt, delivering the final, fatal wound. The fire mage and her guard watch in awe. The swordsman observes that a strong person would typically try to cut down an enemy head-on, but Lekin chose a different path, exploiting the creature's specific weakness with cold precision. The giant boar is finally slain, its massive body now motionless on the blood-stained ground. Lekin stands over his kill, his posture tense as he recovers from the exertion. He approaches the armored swordsman, who is examining the beast. Lekin states that he has completely used up his magic powers in the fight and announces his intention to retrieve the magic stone from the creature's corpse. He crushes the freshly harvested magic stone in his gloved hand. A wisp of excess energy escapes, but he knows that even with his storage ability, some magic is bound to leak. Still, he reasons, possessing the stone will be convenient later on. As the swordsman he saved begins to speak, Lekin's eyes narrow. He listens intently, but a realization dawns on him. Though they look human, their language is completely different from his own. He extends his senses, confirming the man possesses only a microscopic, negligible amount of magic, making him more or less human. But then, he detects another, more distinct magical response from a different direction. His gaze immediately snaps toward the source of this power, the carriage that had been the target of the attack. From the driver's seat, an old man cautiously peers out, his worried expression softening into relief upon seeing the danger has passed. A moment later, the carriage door creaks open, and a single, well-made boot steps onto the running board. A young woman emerges, followed by a stern-faced attendant. Lekin watches as she steps down from the carriage. He understands at once. This girl is the other source of magic he sensed. She places a hand to her chest, her expression open and kind as she speaks to him in her unfamiliar language. He observes her, noting that she is much younger than he first thought. Judging by her refined manners, she must be of high status. Though he cannot comprehend her words, he intuits that she is thanking him. He looks at her and speaks plainly, apologizing that he cannot understand her words, and acknowledging that she probably can't understand his either. He clenches his gloved fist, a stark realization dawning on him. This is the first time he has ever been in a place where he cannot communicate. Despite the barrier, he straightens his posture, a quiet determination settling over him. His gaze falls upon the young woman. She had shown him respect, followed proper etiquette, and accorded him every courtesy. He decides he must return the gesture. Meanwhile, the young noblewoman speaks with her attendant, Isaac. Lekin watches from a distance, pondering if his formal gesture, etiquette from the royal palace of his own world, was conveyed properly. He muses that while such formality might be unnecessary for an adventurer, one never knows when it could be useful. Her conversation with Isaac concludes, and the young woman's expression hardens with resolve. She turns back towards Lekin, her hands clasped, ready to make her intentions clear despite the language divide. Before she can gesture further, he reaches out and firmly takes her hand in his. The sudden, direct contact startles her. Holding his gaze, she speaks slowly, enunciating each word with purpose, hoping the meaning will transcend language. Together, with me. She then turns, gesturing with her free hand toward a grand residence visible on a distant hill, making her invitation unmistakable. To my residence. His eye follows her gesture, processing the offer. With a firm nod, his expression resolute, he accepts. Understood. I'll accept your invitation. True to his word, he follows the party, crossing a bridge and arriving at the edge of the water surrounding the estate. He adjusts his equipment, securing the sword on his back with a firm tug. To avoid suspicion, he decides to hide the items he has in his dimensional storage. He reasons that it would be unnatural to arrive empty-handed, but showing off skills and abilities unknown in this world would be even more foolish. With his decision made, he shifts the small knife at his waist, satisfied that he now presents the appearance of a normal traveler. As he finishes his preparations, the young noblewoman gestures with glowing hands, beckoning him to follow. Lekin watches her, a flicker of surprise crossing his face as he follows her down the path. Nearby, an armored swordsman lies on the ground, clutching a severe wound to his abdomen. The fire mage kneels beside him in distress, while the noblewoman approaches, her hands ready. Lekin observes from a distance, realizing the noblewoman is a user of healing magic. He had initially thought the fire mage was the more powerful of the two, but now understands that the scale of the noblewoman's magic is considerably greater as a soft light emanates from the swordsman's wound. Later, as they stand before a carriage, the attendant Isaac confirms that it is acceptable for Lekin to ride with them. Lekin quietly reflects on how long it has been since he last traveled in such a manner. Inside the moving carriage, he pulls back the curtain. Peering out, he is struck by the immense size of the estate they are approaching. The view from his window reveals the towering gates of the residence looming before them. The carriage passes through the entrance and into the courtyard of the Zydmore Dominion's feudal lord residence, a vast and imposing mansion. In the courtyard of a stately home, Lekin sits alone beneath a tree, his large black coat wrapped around him. He rests in quiet contemplation, a solitary figure against the clean architecture of the building. From a window above, Livianate watches him, her eyes fixed on his form. She recognizes him as the visitor she had previously mentioned, his dark silhouette starkly framed by the window. Inside, Zanjikal, the Zydmore family patriarch, turns from the window to address Sir Isaac, a knight in his service. He asks for the knight's assessment of the man outside. Isaac reports that while Lekin possesses military strength to a dangerous degree, he also appears to be a man of manners who shows gratitude when appropriate. Zanjikal considers this, noting that Isaac speaks highly of him and also recalling that Lekin saved his daughter. With his mind made up, he instructs Isaac to give the visitor the hut in the garden, leaving the details to the knight. Isaac formally accepts the order. Elsewhere, Lekin takes a quiet sip from a cup, his expression thoughtful. A full year passes. The seasons change across the rolling hills and fields marked by windmills. After that year, Lekin is seen far from the estate, leaping from a cliff's edge into a dense, wild forest below. He lands with the clang of his sword drawn, confronting two hulking, feline magical beasts. At that same moment, miles away, the young man called Blue stops in his tracks, his senses suddenly alerting him to the presence of the two creatures. Without a moment's hesitation, Lekin becomes a whirlwind of action, his blade a dark streak as he cuts down the snarling monsters. The swift battle concludes. He stands over the fallen bodies of the two beasts, wiping his blade clean before sheathing it. His task complete, he returns to the Zydmore estate, passing through the gate. As he walks the familiar path, Sir Izak approaches with a wide smile, calling out a cheerful greeting. "Morning, Lekin." He greets Sir Izak in the morning, proposing another session. Izak expresses surprise, remarking on how quickly Lekin is ready to go hunting again. Their hunt takes place not in the forest, but in a paved courtyard, where the two men face each other with wooden training swords. Izak initiates the spar with a powerful, roaring overhead strike, which Lekin deftly parries, their wooden blades clashing with force. As they continue to trade blows, Lekin reflects that a year has now passed since he began staying at the Zydmore estate. During that time, he was able to learn most of the local language, which had been his biggest challenge. He recalls that he was initially met with suspicion, but thanks to the respect shown to him by the feudal lord's daughter, Lady Livianate, and the knight Izak, he is now completely integrated into the household. Back in the present, the duel continues. Lekin effortlessly blocks another of Izak's determined attacks, prompting a grunt of frustration from the knight. The spar concludes as Izak lowers his sword, yielding. He admits that he is still no match for Lekin, who simply acknowledges the statement without offering any compliments. Watching from a nearby veranda, Lady Livianate excitedly asks Lekin to spar with her next. Izak comments that a compliment wouldn't make him stronger anyway, and Lekin quietly agrees that this is true. Their duel had drawn an audience. A large group of household guards and other trainees had gathered to watch the display of swordsmanship. Now acting as an instructor, Lekin calls for the next person. A young female trainee steps forward, bowing deeply and thanking him for the lesson as he prepares for the next bout. After his training session, he is approached by Sir Izak and an attendant, Luvis. She informs him that Lady Livianate has called for him, but with a pointed look, asks that he please come after breakfast and not in his current sweaty state. Heeding her words, he changes into formal attire. As he walks down a sunlit corridor, he internally laments his inability to grow accustomed to such fancy clothes. He arrives at a chamber and slides the door open. Livianate greets him with a warm smile, saying, "Good morning, Lekin." He returns the greeting informally. "Good morning, Luvi." Livianate explains that she was the one who told him to call her by the nickname Luvi. She adds that the formal titles are only really enforced when her stricter servants, Gria or Marinka, are around. With the pleasantries over, she presents a request. Addressing him as "my wolf," she states her wish to go to a cliff and asks for his protection on the journey. She continues, clarifying that she has already received permission from her father for the excursion and was just about to inform Izak of the plan. He agrees to her request on the condition that he receives the official instruction from Izak. He then adds a condition of his own, telling her to wear her own clothes for the trip, including her lovely cloak, rather than formal livery. Returning to his quarters, Lekin begins to change his attire once more, remarking to himself that he's been changing clothes quite a lot this morning. His own dark, practical cloak hangs waiting. As he dresses, he considers his personal gear. The pants are made with rare resources by a master craftsman. The vest, woven from the thread of rock spiders, is a masterpiece of defensive magic. Finally, he takes up his cloak. It was fashioned from the hide of the Bear King, granting it superior defensive magic by nature. A jewel sewn into the collar adds a self-restoration effect, completing his formidable adventuring ensemble. He finishes adjusting his gear, a sense of ease washing over him as he settles into the familiar equipment. Just then, a sharp knock echoes from his door, and a voice calls out his name, Lekin. He opens the door to find an armored swordsman waiting. The man informs him that he has work to guard the young lady's carriage. He asks if Lekin can depart immediately, to which Lekin simply replies, "Got it." The swordsman gives a slight, sharp nod and turns to lead the way, his task of delivering the message complete. Lekin watches him for a moment before following. As they walk, the swordsman glances back, remarking on Lekin's appearance. He notes that Lekin certainly doesn't look like a noble's guard, and that this could be troublesome for the young lady. Annoyed, Lekin dismisses the comment, telling him to just get going. They have now left the residence. A carriage drawn by 4 horses makes its way down a dirt path through a wooded area. Livianate and Izak are visible near the carriage door as Lekin follows on foot from a distance. The armored swordsman, now driving the carriage, reflects on his duties. Since arriving at the residence, his job has been to guard the patriarch of the family and the young lady on their outings. He notes that they only ever go to the forest or the outskirts, never into the town itself. The journey continues through the vast, open wilderness. The carriage and its lone escort are but small silhouettes against the expansive landscape, as birds circle in the sky above. Lekin, walking alone, considers the situation. He sees this trip as a favorable opportunity, yet he can't shake the feeling that he has stayed in this place for a little too long. His thoughts drift to his life within the Zydmore household. He admits it isn't uncomfortable. On the contrary, it's far too comfortable. He recalls how they accept him, a strange foreigner, and a mental image of the family and its retainers, Zanjikal, Livianate, Isaac, and others, forms in his mind. He contrasts this peaceful existence with his true ambitions. He did not come to this world for a quiet lifestyle. He came to see things he's never seen, to fight enemies stronger than any he's faced, and to gain wealth and strength. He mused on the existence of mazes in this world, places where magical beasts were said to guard rare treasures. The thought of exploring them sparked a familiar desire for adventure, making him wish his companion Bod was present. At that moment, Isaac, riding nearby, suddenly went rigid. His senses detected the response of a magical beast, a large one. It was approaching quickly, and he knew he would have to deal with it. The entire party was alerted. Lekin looked up from his position on the ground. While Luvianate and the armored swordsmen reined in their horses, their attention fixed on the unseen disturbance. From the dense woods, a massive, monstrous creature erupted, its hulking form towering over the path. The armored swordsman stared, his expression hardening at the sight of the sudden, formidable threat. Without hesitation, Lekin sprang into action, pushing off from his seated position. He noted the creature's proximity, realizing it was already dangerously close. The beast revealed its full, terrifying form. It was a gargantuan, multi-limbed, ape-like monster, letting out a ferocious roar as it crashed through the trees. He faced it calmly, clenching his fist. He identified the creature as a spider monkey, confirming his earlier assessment of its considerable size. With a deafening hiss, the spider monkey charged, its powerful legs churning the earth. From her position, Luvianate cried out, startled by the threatening sound of its thunderous approach. Just as the beast's attack was about to land, Lekin met it head-on, catching its thick arm in his grasp. The creature let out a choked grunt of surprise as he vowed not to release it. A faint glow emanated from the sigil on his glove. He dug his heels into the ground, his body braced against the monster's immense weight. With his coat whipping around him, he held the line, single-handedly halting the charge of the furious beast. He stands over the corpse of the spider monkey. The massive beast is still a dark, viscous fluid pooling on the ground from the fatal wound to its head. With the threat neutralized, he kneels beside the creature's head, preparing to harvest his prize. Now, then, he murmurs, his focus absolute. As he works, his thoughts turn to the value of what he seeks. Even in this world, magic stones are highly prized. He recalls that beyond their use in large-scale rituals and magic, they serve as a raw ingredient for magic potions. Furthermore, while he doesn't know the specifics, they're also a key component for crafting items known as magic tools. His task complete, he holds up the glowing magic stone he extracted. At that moment, Isaac and another companion approach from the carriage. Lekin, Isaac calls out, "How is it?" He shows the prize to Isaac, who takes the stone and inspects it closely, a glimmer of approval in his eyes as the object shines in his gloved hand. Sometime later, their journey resumes. Isaac, now mounted on a horse, guides the carriage through a dense, dark forest. As they clear the tree line, Isaac brings the horse to a halt. "Madam," he announces, "we have arrived." From within the carriage, a woman's voice replies, "Thank you, Isaac. I'll come out immediately." The carriage door opens and Luvianate steps out. Her face lights up with wonder as she takes in a vista. "Yeah," she breathes. "As I thought, the most beautiful view is here." Before them lies a vast, tranquil valley, marked by ancient, weathered stone monoliths. Far below, Lekin and Isaac walk along a path, dwarfed by the immense scale of their surroundings. Luvianate stands in profile against the open sky, her long hair flowing in the wind. A serene, contemplative expression graces her features as she gazes out upon the valley. She seemed to be in a better mood than usual, but as Lekin observed her, he couldn't shake the feeling that for a split second he had seen a look of profound sadness cross her face. In a brightly lit room, Luvianate sits patiently before a window as her attendant, Gria, meticulously braids her long, light-colored hair. Gria asks if she is pleased with the result. Luvianate, looking serene, confirms that she is and offers her thanks. With her hair now perfectly styled, Gria fastens a delicate silver necklace with a crescent moon pendant around Luvianate's neck, completing her preparations. Later, in a grand hall filled with guests, Lord Felial addresses the assembly. He formally announces that his daughter, Luvianafel, has turned 14 and is now officially recognized as an adult. He raises his goblet high, proposing a toast to his daughter. The crowd enthusiastically responds, their voices joining in a collective cheers as they lift their own glasses in celebration. From his table, Lekin quietly observes the festivities. He watches the other guests mingling and feasting, his gaze sweeping over the lavish spread. His companion, Bald, offers to carve a piece of the roasted bird for him, an offer Lekin accepts. After tasting a piece himself and declaring it delicious due to the plentiful spices, Bald places a generous portion on Lekin's plate. While eating, Lekin's attention drifts back to the head table. He internally processes a key cultural fact. In this world, reaching the age of 14 marks the transition to full adulthood. He admits to himself that he had previously thought of Luvianate as just a simple-minded child. He continues his thought, arriving at a stark conclusion. If she is an adult, then in other words, marriage is now permitted. The gravity of this realization hangs in the air, reflected in Luvionade's distant and pensive expression. While the young lady remained in her seat, her expression distant, Zanjikal approached Lekin, remarking on his large appetite. Lekin, holding a covered dish, simply stated that the chicken was delicious. He was then approached by Zak, who quietly asked for a private word. Lekin agreed. Nearby, Zanjikal offered Lekin some rare wine from the royal capital, which he accepted. Zak then led him towards a corner, apologizing for the suddenness of his request. He asked Lekin to avoid going near the library for a while. Lekin agreed without issue, but Zanjikal interjected, explaining the reason for the request. He revealed that starting the next day, messengers from other noble households would be arriving to congratulate Luvionate. Zanjikal added that while no one in their house was suspicious of Lekin, the visiting families might not be so understanding. Lekin, taking a sip of his drink, listened as Zak elaborated. He explained that if a person of unclear identity were seen at the young lady's side, others might find fault with needless things. He continued, explaining that a daughter of nobility is burdened with the duty of forming alliances through blood relationships. Everyone, he lamented, is desperate to be seen as a good candidate. Apologizing for the situation, he heard Lekin simply state his understanding. Sometime later, Lekin left the mansion behind, venturing into the vast, mountainous wilderness surrounding the estate. He walked through the dense woods, contemplating his new freedom. For now, he could go on trips without constraint, and he decided to put the matter aside for the time being. His thoughts turned to his purpose for being in the wilderness. He had been hunting valuable prey near the mansion, and he realized that if he went deeper into the mountains, he might encounter a truly formidable magical beast. As if in response to his thought, a familiar sensation pulsed in his mind, a message from Blue's life-sensing ability. The message was clear and urgent. A magical beast was nearby, and its presence was exceptionally strong. He draws his knife, considering himself fortunate to have encountered a target so soon, only 3 days into his search. The connection with Blue clarifies. He has pinpointed the creature's location. Realizing it's still too distant for his 3D object sensor, Lekin decides to use the terrain, hiding behind a slope to close the distance. As he approaches, the sheer scale of the beast becomes apparent. Its massive, clawed feet crush the earth beneath them as it tears into something on the ground. From his concealed position, he gets a full view of the creature, a colossal, low-slung beast covered in a thick mantle of long, sharp quills. He studies its strange anatomy, noting that he has never encountered a magical beast with 3 eyes before. It is a creature of immense size, 10 feet tall and 20 feet wide, with a truly hefty build. His tactical assessment continues. The beast has 6 legs, but they are quite short compared to its massive body, leading him to surmise it cannot be very fast. With this information gathered, he contemplates his next move. His hand tightens on the hilt of his sword. He weighs the option of a surprise attack, but acknowledges the immense danger. Without knowing its weaknesses or attack patterns, a direct confrontation would be reckless. He surveys the clearing, the vast distance between his position and the oblivious beast underscoring the risk of a failed approach. After a moment of intense consideration, he makes a decision. It's no good. Challenging it now, unprepared, would be pure recklessness. Just as he resolves to leave, a twig snaps under his boot. The beast's central eye twitches open, its gaze sharp and aware. Realizing his presence may have been detected, Lekin decides to withdraw for the day. The sound of his retreat did not go unnoticed. The colossal, 3-eyed beast stirs, its massive head lifting as its central eye fixes upon the source of the disturbance. Far away, amidst tall reeds, Blue jolts in alarm. A wave of dread washes over him as his senses flare, making him wonder with terror if the creature has somehow found him. But the immediate danger was not for Blue. The beast unleashes a storm of razor-sharp quills, a deadly barrage tearing through the forest. Crap, Lekin thinks, desperately invoking a gust of wind to propel himself away from the lethal projectiles. He pushes himself faster, chaining bursts of wind to gain speed. The sheer power of the assault is staggering, forcing him to focus every ounce of his being on escape. Glancing over his shoulder, he sees the barrage has momentarily ceased, prompting a flicker of hope. But the relief is short-lived. He realizes his magic is nearly depleted. This wind is not a true flight skill, merely a desperate, temporary measure, and he cannot maintain this distance. His hope shatters as he realizes the beast is not giving up. It's preparing another strike. Before he can fully process the danger, a projectile slams into his side with a sickening thud. He hits the ground, enveloped in a sudden, dense mist. It's not smoke, but a wave of intensely cold air. He knows that if he can make it into the dense forest, he might be able to shake his pursuer. However, he also understands that with his current equipment, another direct hit would be the end of him. Scrambling to his feet, he pushes onward, having already covered 100 meters. He marvels at the creature's relentless pursuit, thinking that with his speed he should be able to get away. Yet the beast is unlike any he has ever faced. Behind him, the full impact of the beast's attack is revealed. A massive crater carved into the earth, trees and rock pulverized by the force of the icy blast. The ground trembles as the creature, undeterred, charges forward, closing the gap with terrifying speed. Lekin feels a surge of despair. Despite his efforts, he's making no progress. He is trapped, wondering what he should do now. He desperately uses his wind skill, throwing himself sideways in a burst of speed. The ground where he stood just a moment ago erupts violently as the beast's attack slams into it, creating a deep crater. The massive creature looks down at the empty crater, its quills still bristled from the force of its assault. Its prey has vanished. Its 3 eyes blink in apparent confusion and frustration, scanning the area for any sign of the one who escaped. Having found temporary refuge, Lekin leans against a tree, breathing heavily. He reflects on the unbelievable power of the magical beast, noting that it seems to prepare itself in various ways before a fight. He concludes that his first priority must be to replenish his own magic. He attempts to draw on his power, but the magical energy emanating from his gloved hand only flickers weakly, confirming his depleted state. Remembering a potential solution, he retrieves a small vial. It is the magic medicine he received from the Zydmore household, and he decides to try it. He drinks the potion, but immediately recoils, his face contorting in disgust. He is shocked by the foul taste, wondering if it was truly safe to ingest something so vile. After recovering from the taste, he confirms his suspicion. The medicine was weak. A thought then strikes him, and he pulls out a different container, considering the use of medicine from his former world. He realizes that even this other medicine is no longer enough to fully replenish his magic. The image of the beast looms in his mind. If he were to face it again in his current state, he would not be left unscathed. He must find a replacement medicine somewhere. With new resolve, he makes his way through the forest until he approaches a high brick wall and a large, fortified gate, the entrance to his settlement. He arrived at what appeared to be a grand estate, where an ornate, dark carriage was parked before the main building. The swordsman deduced that an aristocrat must be staying over, a guest who likely arrived while he was out. He considered that it would be normal for a guest from a distant place to stay the night. Yet something about the situation felt off. His gaze lingered on the vehicle, taking in its ostentatious, almost terrible luxury. Later, having been granted lodging, he rested in a simple room. His sword stood ready by the window, which looked out onto the estate's grounds. Suddenly, a disturbance jolted him from his rest. He sat bolt upright in bed, his eyes wide with alarm as he questioned the source of the commotion. Elsewhere on the estate, Blue's unique senses flared. He detected a magical being on the premises, noting with concern that it was heading for the main building at a fair speed. He also realized that Luvi and Marinko were inside. Responding instantly to the threat, Lekin was already outside, his coat thrown on. Staring up at the grand structure, he roared a warning to the entire compound. It's an invasion. In the dead of night, the aftermath of a fierce struggle is evident. The ground is churned and scarred, and the thick trunks of several large trees have been violently snapped, their splintered remains littering the clearing. From this scene of destruction, a dark-cloaked figure begins to scale the sheer wall of a nearby building, their gloved hand gripping a ledge as they pull themselves silently upward. This climber is not alone. Another person, clad head to toe in metal armor, is also ascending the building with surprising agility, moving from ledge to ledge with practiced, swift movements. On an adjacent rooftop, Lekin watches the armored climber's progress, his expression grim as he tracks their ascent against the dark facade of the building. He analyzes the climber's fluid, efficient motions. A chilling realization forms in his mind. Those are the movements of a skillful assassin. His mind races, connecting the assassin's trajectory to the layout of the building. He understands with dawning horror that the direction they are headed leads directly to Luvi's bedroom. As the assassin continues their rapid ascent across the rooftop, Lekin knows he won't make it in time if he uses the stairs. He shouts, invoking his power, Wind. In response to his command, gusts of wind erupt around him, propelling him forward in a desperate leap across the gap between buildings as he gives chase. The assassin reaches their destination. Using a rope, they swing silently through an open window. Inside the room, Luvianate lies asleep in her bed, completely vulnerable. She remains peacefully asleep, her face serene and utterly unaware of the imminent danger that has just entered her room. Inside the room, the hooded assassin, having just slipped through the window, is startled by a sudden noise from behind. The source of the sound is Lekin, who bursts through the same window frame, descending upon the intruder with focused intensity. The assassin looks up, their eyes wide with shock and disbelief. He crashes into the assassin with brutal force, the impact sending the intruder flying backward out of the window and down toward the ground below. The commotion finally stirs Luvianate, who murmurs, Mr. Wolf? As she begins to wake. Lekin lands silently in her room, the immediate threat neutralized, and lets out a quiet sigh. Moments later, on the stone courtyard below, Lekin, Zanjikal, and Izak stand over the still form of the fallen assassin. Lord Felial joins them, his expression grim as he looks upon the body. He confirms his understanding of the situation, stating that this person was an intruder aiming for his daughter. He turns to Lekin, admitting that his own thinking was naive. He had posted a night watch in front of his daughter's room, but never considered that an attacker would come through the window. Felial elaborates, explaining that he had expected interference. It has been decided that Luvianate will marry into the Shadrest family, a noble house connected to the royal family. This has made her a target for other families who hoped their own daughters would become the next matriarch. The revelation visibly startles Lekin. Isaac then asks Filial if Lekin couldn't have captured the assassin without killing her. Filial dismisses the idea, stating that if Lekin hadn't been there, the situation would have been dire. He admits, however, that he didn't think they would send an assassin so suddenly. Filial concludes that letting the assassin live was too dangerous, especially if she possessed a skill that allowed her to attack from a distance. He reasons the chance of her having a strong magical skill was high, a suspicion confirmed as the assassin's body begins to dissolve into magical residue. This woman, he realizes, possessed magic. He stood in contemplation, hand covering his mouth, remarking to himself on the extreme measures the female assassin had taken. Beside him, Lekin remained silent, his expression unreadable. Joining Isaac and Zanjikal, Filial expressed regret that they couldn't capture her alive to learn her employer's name. Isaac was quick to dismiss the idea, stating she wouldn't have confessed anyway. Zanjikal agreed, adding that he's heard assassins are trained to choose death immediately upon being caught. Zanjikal elaborated on this grim reality, concluding that it's better not to know the mastermind's identity. After all, he reasoned, even if they knew who was behind the attack, there would be nothing they could do about it. His attention then shifted entirely to Lekin. Zanjikal praised the young man's actions as nothing short of splendid, noting that he was the only person who even realized an intruder was sneaking in. He looked up towards the high wall, openly wondering if Lekin's ability to scale such a height was some kind of special power. Placing a hand on Lekin's shoulder, Zanjikal formally thanked him. He then made a direct request, asking Lekin to officially continue protecting his daughter. Lekin's response was a simple and firm yes. Later that night, a quiet stillness settled over the estate, the buildings dark against the moonless sky. The peace was broken as a new figure silently scaled the outer wall, using a grappling hook to pull themselves over the top. Landing softly inside the compound, the masked intruder crouched, preparing to move through the grounds. In an instant, Lekin dropped from above, his arm raised to strike. The intruder, their distinctively patterned mask now visible, could only look up in wide-eyed shock. As he stood over the fallen body, Lekin noted internally that this was the fourth one. The enemy, he concluded, was quite persistent. He then leaped down from the wall he had been patrolling. He stands alone, gazing out a window, and resigns himself to his new reality. It seems he will not be able to leave this place until Luvianate's wedding has safely concluded. This realization comes during a meeting he was summoned to by Luvianate herself, who sits across a small table from him, attended by her handmaiden, Luvis. She peppers him with an endless stream of questions, addressing him as La Envy. She asks about the sweets from his birthplace, the clothes worn by noble women there, and even what he ate for breakfast in his supposed hometown. Lekin reflects on her unusual talkativeness, noting that it has been a while since they spoke so freely. He understands that La Envy are people from another world, and their appearance is considered extremely rare. He considers that Luvianate seems to truly believe he is one of these legendary figures. However, he recalls that historical records clearly state no La Envy remain, though it is said they all possess some kind of outstanding power. Their discussion is cut short when the attendant, Luvis, clears her throat, reminding her lady that it is time for her other appointments. Luvianate apologizes for detaining Lekin, thanking him and saying she had fun, to which he simply agrees. He accepts the dismissal and turns to leave, but as he reaches the doorway, Luvianate's voice calls out sharply, telling him to wait. He pauses, his back still to her. She faces him with a serious expression. Addressing him as my wolf, she states that she has a request. She wants him to show her the red jewel on his chest. The request startles him. His eyes widen in shock as his hand instinctively moves to the collar of his tunic, covering the spot. He internally curses, wondering how she could have possibly noticed the jewel he tried so hard to keep hidden. Stunned into silence, Lekin turns and walks stiffly down the hall, passing another attendant who holds a tray. The woman watches him go, sensing the sudden tension in his posture. As Lekin reels from the revelation, the focus shifts to a different jewel, a dark, cracked pendant resting in a bowl, its chain dangling over the edge. Luvianate holds this jewel in her palm, remarking on its beauty. In the background, Lekin watches her, his expression tense and wary. She turns away from him, examining the pendant closely with a serene look before lifting it up. She holds the necklace aloft, displaying the dark jewel hanging from its delicate chain. Instead of putting it on, she turns to her attendant, Gria. Luvianate hands the jewel over, instructing her to give it to Marinka. Luvianate calmly tells Gria that it is fine, but another, older attendant cries out in alarm, shouting that her lady mustn't part with such an item. Ignoring the protest, Luvianate stands with quiet determination as Gria presents the jewel on a tray. Lekin watches, a horrifying realization dawning on him as he internally begs her to stop. His internal plea turns to visible anguish. Luvianate addresses him directly as Mr. Wolf, while he, looking utterly distressed, begs her to stop, pleading that this alone is too much. With Gria standing between them holding the tray, Luvianate makes her intentions clear. She states that she will give him her jewel, and in return, he must give her his. Lekin is stunned into silence by the direct proposition. Gria and the elderly attendant watch him, their faces etched with concern and tension as they await his response. He remains kneeling, understanding the implication of her offer. It is a reward for a favored knight, a formal bestowal that signifies a step toward becoming her retainer. His mind races. He knows there is no way the young lady's highly valued jewel is equal to his simple wanderer's stone. He recalls obtaining his jewel while exploring a labyrinth, investing his entire fortune to have it entrusted to a renowned bestower. It is a rare stone that restores both stamina and magic, and it has supported all his adventures since. Luvianate, however, knows none of this. Flashes of past battles and hardships fill his thoughts. To him, the jewel is more than an item. It is the very proof that he has lived. Despite his deep attachment, he weighs the consequences. He feels he cannot hand it over, yet he realizes that refusing means he can no longer stay at the estate. More importantly, he worries that Luvianate will be upset by his refusal. Making his choice, he bows his head in formal acceptance. Yes, a flicker of shock crosses his own face as he processes his decision. Luvianate, however, beams with pure relief and happiness. He turns and walks away, questioning why he consented, but quickly resigning himself to the fact. Oh well. Alone now, he forms a new plan. He will make the exchange, and then leave the estate soon after, slipping out just before the wedding preparations begin. Walking down a long, empty corridor, he considers that Luvianate might become sad, but he believes that with time, she will surely forget about the stray wolf. However, there was to be no such opportunity for Lekin. In the days that followed, the atmosphere at the estate grew tense. The number of people on night watch increased significantly. To assist with the wedding preparations, someone was always by the young lady's side, day or night. After all this activity, the young lady, Luvianate, finally finished her preparations. Merely 2 days after the recent disruption, she stood ready, her expression somber beneath the wide brim of her hat. With the rattling of wheels on the stone road, her carriage departed. Lady Luvianate was on her way to a faraway town to meet her in-laws outside the Zydmore estate. A temporary camp is set up near a dirt road. In the distance, Luvianate and Izak walk along the path, while within the camp, Lekin sits partially obscured by a tent, observing the surroundings. He remains seated by a wooden fence post, his gaze fixed on some unseen point in the distance, his expression unreadable. His quiet contemplation is interrupted by Bald, who approaches with his arms crossed. The older man observes Lekin's focus and dryly asks if staring at the vegetable patch is fun. As Lekin eats, Bald chides him for scarfing down his food, reminding him it's expensive. He then offers him a griffle leaf to chew on, which Lekin accepts with a simple word of thanks. The two sit together in a shared silence, leaning against the wooden structure. Lekin finally breaks the quiet, admitting he has no motivation. Bald probes further, asking if something happened and noting that, lately, the knights haven't been training. The older man continues, explaining that Izak has also completely lost his vigor. He concludes that it's not a lack of motivation, but a general lack of energy that seems to have affected everyone. Bald then reveals the reason for the gloom. The young lady is getting married. The news clearly affects Lekin, who thinks of Luvianate, realizing how lonely this development feels. His thoughts drift to an image of her smiling face. He reflects that for him, someone who had become alone in a different world, Luvianate had certainly given him a place to belong. Gazing toward the estate, Lekin's resolve hardens. He feels he must, at the very least, repay her kindness before he leaves. The question that remains, however, is what he can possibly do. He confirms the assessment of the assembled guards. The magical beast is not an opponent the local knights can handle. His gaze is distant, his mind already turning to the implications. Because of this, he stands resolute before his trainer, sword in hand, and declares his purpose. The only thing he can do is fight. This is how he will repay her kindness. To prepare, he surveys an arsenal of weapons laid out on a wooden platform. He notes the lack of any spear-like weapons designed for large beasts, internally acknowledging that bombs are only a last resort. He decides to proceed with his own blade. His strategy is clear. First, he will confirm his opponent's abilities. Everything else comes after. For now, he will simply try to fight it once more. With his resolve set, he charges across the barren plains, kicking up dust as he closes the distance to the monstrous creature. As he approaches, he conjures a blast of wind, aiming to disorient the quill beast. He reasons that if he can draw its attention and then suddenly dodge, he might create an opening for a decisive strike. The magical assault works as intended, causing the massive beast to turn its head toward the disturbance, its quills bristling. Through the swirling dust, the creature's central eye locks onto him, tracking his movement with predatory focus. The feint creates the opening he needs. I got it, he thinks, lunging forward to deliver a powerful blow while the beast is distracted. His sword strikes true, but the impact sends a jarring shock up his arm. He stares in disbelief as his blade rebounds, failing to even scratch the hide. He realizes with horror the creature's unbelievable hardness and flexibility. His attack hadn't even reached the bone. He stares in disbelief as the quill beast remains completely unharmed by his attack. The creature's 3 eyes fix upon him, and a chilling realization dawns. The situation is dire. In response, he summons a powerful gust of wind at his feet, attempting to create distance from the monstrous creature. But his shock deepens as he witnesses the beast's next move. His eye widens in utter disbelief. The quill beast unleashes a devastating volley, launching the quills from its back like a storm of deadly needles. The barrage strikes him with brutal force, and he cries out as his weapon is impacted. Realizing he cannot allow this to continue, he channels his wind magic once more, propelling himself backward in a desperate retreat. He knows he must create distance immediately. As he puts space between them, the quill beast lets out a triumphant roar, its form silhouetted against the sky. He scrambles for the nearest cover, diving through a dark doorway to escape the open field. Inside, his strength gives out. He collapses face first onto a bed, groaning in pain and exhaustion. Lying there, he reflects on the sheer danger of the encounter. He realizes the beast used a terrifying combination of a breath attack and its needle-like quills. It was only because he possessed a top-grade magical potion that he survived. Without it, he would have surely died. He reflects on the potent but foul-tasting medicine he took, realizing he can't expect much from it. While he knows how to create mid-grade magical potions, the raw materials for this superior concoction are a mystery to him. He concludes that he must find a doctor to learn the production method. His thoughts then turn back to the battle, a problem giving him a headache. He laments not aiming for the quill beast's eyes, doubting he'll be able to strike the same opening a second time. The beast's exposed neck before it spikes presents another target, but attacking it seems difficult. He considers how to attack. He muses that Bod would have been a better match for such a massive enemy. While a weapon might pierce the beast's throat if it gets close, the risk is substantial. Realizing that the longer he waits, the harder the beast will be to defeat, he decides it is better to face it soon. He resolves to fight it again and find a way to escape. Meanwhile, Blue's unique senses pick up on the creature's location. He notes its powerful magic, confirming that it was nearby. Following his own senses, Lekin moves through the woods, eventually finding the quill beast curled up and motionless in a clearing. He freezes, his eyes widening at an unexpected opportunity. The beast is sleeping. He reflects that there were some benefits to his recent interactions, recalling that he obtained Luvy's treasure jewel in exchange for his charm. As he thinks, he pulls out a small, sharp tool. The massive quill beast lies peacefully in the tall grass, completely unaware of the nearby observer. From the cover of the trees, Lekin watches the slumbering creature, contemplating his next move. He analyzed the sleeping beast, weighing his options for a single decisive strike. The throat? The flank? No. He concluded it had to be the creature's third eye. If he could destroy that, he would undoubtedly gain the upper hand. With his target chosen, he launched himself from the tall grass, sword held high as he descended upon the quill beast's head. Suddenly, the beast's third eye snapped open. The unexpected movement startled him, causing his body to veer away from his intended target at the worst possible moment. His blade struck the creature's hide, not the eye. Yet, to his utter astonishment, he felt his sword cut into its flesh. He couldn't believe it, wondering if this was the same spot he had failed to pierce before. The quill beast recoiled, its eye wide with a mixture of pain and shock from the wound it had just sustained. He landed smoothly, sliding to a stop in the grass, and quickly putting some distance between himself and the now alerted monster. Watching the beast, he noticed something was different. There was something present now that hadn't been there before. His gaze dropped to the small pendant in his hand. A realization struck him. Luvy's treasure jewel was amplifying his offensive ability. He processed the improbable truth. An accessory that granted such power just by holding it seemed impossible. In his former world, he had only ever known one person with a comparable slash-attack ability, and their power came at a terrible price. But the fact remained, his sword had cut the beast. This certainty filled him with resolve. Facing the roaring monster, he knew with absolute conviction that he could cut this thing. He could defeat it. He watched as the quill beast turned, momentarily confused. Was it running away? The thought barely formed before he felt a shift in the air and understood. It wasn't retreating, it was charging. As the creature thundered closer, he noticed that the quills on its front hadn't regenerated since their last battle. Realizing it was out of ammunition confirmed his decision to re-engage, so soon was the right one. With an opening clear, he prepared a gust of wind. In that instant, he burst into motion, using the momentum to sprint through the tall grass, putting his plan into action. The beast roared, following him without hesitation. He knew that if it was going to follow him, it would have no choice but to face his direction, playing right into his strategy. He focused on maintaining his distance. He was confident that as long as he could endure its breath attack with the protection of the Bear King's hide, the fight was manageable. Behind him, the creature gained ground. Without warning, the beast tucked its limbs and curled into a massive, spined sphere, beginning a devastating rolling charge that tore up the earth in its path. He glanced back, acknowledging that escaping its roll would be difficult in the dense forest with its many obstacles. But as they entered a rocky clearing, he saw his opportunity. In the clearing, he once again invoked the wind, using the powerful updraft to launch himself high into the air as the rolling behemoth charged directly beneath him. He plunged downward, his blade glowing with amplified energy, driving it straight into the beast's armored back with tremendous force. The The sword bit deep, bringing the creature's devastating roll to a grinding, screeching halt. The cool beast was impaled, its momentum broken. He stands resolute, his long coat shifting around him. Clenching a gauntlet fist, he reflects that with the recent conflict concluded, he can now depart without any lingering reservations. His new adventure, he declares to himself, begins. An older, bearded man wearing dark glasses squints, his expression tense. He addresses an unseen figure, first asking if they are an adventurer, then muttering with a hint of recognition. The man is part of a small delegation of villagers standing before the imposing, dark-cloaked form of Lekin. Alongside the bearded man is a younger, white-haired man and another villager in a hat, all looking up at the adventurer with a sense of desperation. Lekin, seemingly unfazed by their plea, takes a deliberate bite of roasted meat from a skewer he holds. His intense gaze meets theirs as he confirms, that's right. The bearded man, now without his glasses, quickly explains that they are from a nearby village and have a favor to ask of him. The white-haired young man speaks up, mentioning he is from the north and not familiar with the local language, before asking if Lekin can do something about a Zog that has appeared. The bearded man is taken aback, questioning how an adventurer could be unaware of what a Zog is. He clarifies that a Zog is a type of ghost, unlike a magical beast which is a living, breathing creature. It is described as a spirit-like entity that spontaneously manifests in forests and labyrinths. Its form is shadowy, monstrous silhouette. As the story unfolds, the man recounts that at first, a child was abducted. The parents, believing it to be a beast, set out into the forest to find him. Lekin listens silently, wiping his knife clean. The situation grew worse. The mother was attacked, and though the father managed to escape and return home, he was certain it was a Zog. The villager concludes with despair that the ghosts are too much for anyone to handle. Even the bears and wolves are falling to them, and soon, no one will be able to enter the forest. Cutting straight to the point, Lekin asks, "What's the reward?" The bearded man, looking pained, offers a single silver nugget, insisting that it's all they can afford. Lekin internally weighs the offer. He acknowledges the pay is low for risking his life, but his current lack of funds, and, more importantly, his need for information and experience in this new world make it an appealing proposition. He decides this might be the perfect first quest for his adventure. He stood before the villagers, his decision made. "I'll accept," he stated firmly. The man beside him, one of the villagers who had hired him, agreed. He then added his conditions, a place to stay overnight and meals, though he noted the food would be an extra charge. The villagers were overcome with relief. The bald man stammered his thanks, incredulous that Lekin had agreed, while the man with the hat eagerly offered to serve as his guide. Their palpable relief hung in the air as they led him away from the village entrance and into the small, rustic settlement. The guide brought him to an old stable. Lekin observed that while it wasn't as fine as the shed of the Zydmore estate, it was sufficient to keep out the rain and dew, a standard accommodation for an adventurer. As he settled into the rough lodgings, his thoughts drifted back to his departure from the Zydmore estate. He recalled Isaac's parting advice. If asked where he came from, he was to say the north. Isaac had noted that being a lot envy was a secret, but that the time would likely come when he would have to reveal it himself. He also remembered the parting gift from Zanjikal and Isaac. They presented him with a heavy pouch, explaining it was in consideration for the magic stone he had given them. With their gift in hand, he had exchanged final farewells. The household members wished him luck and urged him to take care, while Isaac expressed his hope that they would meet again. The memory of their farewells faded as the morning sun rose over the village. The hatted villager guided Lekin out of the settlement and towards the edge of the nearby woods. Deeper within the trees, the villager stopped, pointing towards a large rock formation. He nervously stated that this was the area where the mother had been attacked. He approached the site, his gaze sharp. Traces of blood were unmistakable on the rocks. This was the scene of the crime. He noted its proximity to the village, not even 1,000 feet away, and understood that with such a threat so close, the villagers would be completely unable to enter the forest. He turned to leave, but the villager called out, his voice trembling as he placed his faith in the swordsman. Lekin paused and simply told the man to wait. As he focused, Blue's consciousness connected with his own. Blue reported that he had located the target, most likely the ghost they were seeking, within a 300-foot radius. The villager looked on in confusion as Lekin announced aloud, "I found it." His discovery made, he turned to the villager with a stern warning, "Don't leave my side." The man let out a terrified squeak as they moved deeper into the oppressive darkness of the woods. Ahead of them, partially concealed behind a thick tree, a large, pale, humanoid figure stood silently, its unnatural form a stark contrast to the surrounding forest. Sensing its presence, Lekin strode forward alone, his gaze fixed on the shadows ahead. He knew, with certainty, that this was his target. From the tree-line emerged a hulking beast with a bizarre, smooth, owl-like head. It raised its powerful arms and let out a great, silent roar of intimidation as Lekin stood his ground, hand resting on his sword's hilt. The creature's featureless face stared at him, its gaping eye sockets betraying no emotion. As it settled into a combat stance, Lekin calmly assessed it, wondering, now then, how will it come at me? It lunged without warning, bringing a massive arm down and a crushing overhead strike. With fluid grace, Lekin sidestepped the blow, which slammed into the earth where he had just been standing. Having easily evaded the attack, he made his assessment. The creature was strong, but its movements were sluggish and lacked intelligence. He realized that even a group of 10 or 20 such beasts would not constitute a real threat. With that thought, the battle was concluded. A single, clean slash from his sword was all it took. The creature's body stood frozen for a moment before its severed head tumbled to the forest floor. He emerges from the forest, his task complete. The villager who hired him rushes forward, his face a mixture of relief and apprehension. He is glad to see Lekin has returned safely, but immediately asks if he encountered any Zog. Back at the village entrance, Bald and Blue watch his approach. Bald expresses surprise at how quickly Lekin dealt with the creature, remarking that simply defeating it is more than enough proof of his skill, with or without a magic stone. Lekin joins them, explaining that he had intended to bring a magic stone as proof, but the ghost's entire body disintegrated into dust upon its defeat. Changing the subject, he asks if there are any good doctors in the area, adding that there is something he wishes to ask. He thinks to himself that he must refill his recovery potion before facing another strong opponent. The villager, overhearing his query, suggests that the most prosperous town nearby, Vokr, would be the best place to find what he needs. Lekin resolves to head there. His journey takes him to a bustling post-station town. He observes the surroundings, noting that while the town itself is small, it is filled with carriages, including services that travel onward to Vokr. Deciding that his first course of action should be to gather information while getting something to eat, he pushes aside the heavy curtain of a local tavern and steps inside. At the counter, Lekin places an order with the keeper for 5 kebabs and some steak. The man behind the counter cheerfully confirms the order, promising it will be right up. The tavern is filled with the low hum of conversation as patrons eat and drink. Unseen by Lekin, the bald trainer he once sparred with sits at a table, his expression thoughtful and his gaze distant. As Lekin begins to eat his meal, the bald trainer approaches his table from behind. He calls out, startling Lekin mid-bite. The trainer points a finger directly at him. When Lekin questions if he's the one being addressed, the old man confirms it with a knowing smile, calling him the big fellow. He strokes his beard, sizing Lekin up. He notes that Lekin appears to be an adventurer and asks if he would be interested in an escort job. The word escort echoes in Lekin's mind. The trainer continues, explaining the job involves attending a carriage for 4 days for a reward of 10 silver nuggets. An elderly man expresses his relief, telling Lekin he will wait outside to introduce him to the shipper. Lekin calmly accepts the offer, internally noting that taking a job on the way to his destination is a perfect opportunity. He turns and settles his bill, his expression thoughtful as he departs the establishment. Outside in the bustling street, the agent spots a man standing by a large, horse-drawn cargo wagon. He waves and calls out, announcing that he has found a good person for the job. The agent presents Lekin, remarking that his appearance is that of a brave man with long military service. The shipper, a portly man named Cheney, waves enthusiastically and calls out for someone named Ivan. Cheney formally introduces himself to Lekin, explaining that he needs to hurry back to his shop in Vokr. His original escorts fell ill, so he will now be depending on 2 new people for the journey. Lekin simply states his own name in return. Suddenly, a young woman leaps down from a rooftop, landing with a flourish. She points accusingly at Lekin, calling him old man and warning him not to drag them down, assuming he must be an unregistered adventurer. She gets right in his face, proudly displaying a small, ornate emblem. With a wide, confident grin, she announces that she is gold class, expecting him to be surprised. The woman, Ida, then vaults onto the carriage wall, declaring she will stand guard. Cheney nervously asks her to get down. Lekin watches, unimpressed, realizing this must be the other escort. He internally compares her age to Luvianafel's, thinking she doesn't look much like an adventurer. Ida scoffs from her perch, mocking Lekin for not even knowing about the organization. In response, Lekin calmly asks what she means by unregistered and gold class. While Ida boasts about her rank, the elderly agent explains to Lekin that she is referring to the adventure organization. He clarifies that registering in Vokr makes it easier to find jobs, and that adventurers are assigned a class based on their abilities. As the group prepares to depart, Ida, perched atop the carriage, protests being told to get down, arguing she has a better vantage point. The merchant, Cheney, ignores her, announcing to everyone that they will leave immediately to cover more ground before making camp. Ida leaps down from the carriage as Lekin watches, unimpressed. He internally questions the logic of adding weight to the carriage when they are in a hurry, dismissing her as a useless woman and wondering how the adventurers' organization could justify giving a raise to such a novice. As Lekin silently judges her, Cheney recalls a previous assessment. He remembers being told that despite her demeanor, Ida possesses a fair amount of magic and might even be a talented sorcerer. His thoughts shift to his other guard, concluding that Lekin must have a secret weapon of his own. Just then, the shipper's agent turns to Lekin, stating that he'll be counting on him for the 4-day journey. Lekin simply affirms. Before they can move, Ida angrily confronts Lekin, demanding to know why an unregistered adventurer is giving orders. Unfazed, Lekin tells her to follow from behind, assuring her he will match her pace. He continues, stating he will take the position in front of the carriage and that they should decide their ranks. Annoyed, Ida retorts that as a gold-class adventurer, she will be the one to decide and will take the lead herself. With that, the agent signals their departure. She turns to Lekin with a challenging smirk, reminding him that the one at the very front is the first to be targeted in an attack. Lekin merely advises her to be careful. His simple reply seems to catch her off guard. She stammers for a moment, then declares she's doing him a favor by letting him take the credit this time. Seeing his silent, unchanging expression, she asks what's wrong. With the roles settled, the group sets off. Ida runs ahead, taking the lead position, while Lekin walks calmly beside the moving carriage. Their journey begins in earnest as the carriage, guided by the agent, rumbles down a dark forest path. Its single lantern cuts a solitary path through the encroaching night. As the convoy halts, the merchant Cheney announces it's time to set up camp. He gestures towards a glowing lantern, which he calls an iPhone, marveling at the magic tool's stable, bright light that allows them to travel after dark. Lekin observes the device, taking in the information. With the decision made, the group's agent begins the work of unhitching the horses from the carriage in a small clearing by the road. Moments later, Lekin returns from the woods, carrying a massive bundle of firewood on his shoulder. The agent looks up in surprise at the quantity he gathered so quickly, asking if this is a good place to put down. He sets the wood down as Cheney approaches, his face beaming with admiration. The merchant praises Lekin, amazed that he led the way on the dark mountain road without getting lost and while maintaining a swift pace. After a brief pause, Lekin simply states that he will make the hearth. As Lekin moves to prepare the fire, the shipper's agent takes out a different kind of magic tool, a glowing, spherical object, and firmly plants it into the ground at the edge of their campsite. The object's light draws Lekin's attention. He approaches the agent, remarking that the magic feels familiar. The agent expresses surprise, noting that Lekin is well informed and that it is a rare magic tool. He asks if the light is meant to ward off evil spirits. Lekin then muses aloud, wondering if it's a common item in a place called Vauker or simply another expensive tool, which would imply Cheney is quite wealthy. Nearby, Bald has already begun preparing the evening meal with impressive speed. Cheney notes his fast work, and Bald confirms he is ready to start cooking. Cheney eagerly tells him to proceed. With the camp settling, Bald turns to Cheney and asks what they should do about the young lady. Cheney wonders if she will even try to catch up, considering she's on a job. Overhearing them, Lekin quietly comments that it was a harsh remark. Far behind the convoy, Ida runs with all her might, but it's no use. After the group's third break, their relentless pace has become too much, and she can no longer catch up as the carriage disappears into the distance. Her predicament was now the subject of debate back at the camp. The shipper's agent turned to Lekin, remarking that it would be a pity for such a young person to become food for magical beasts. From afar, Blue's voice echoed through his life sensor ability, reporting that the life sign he was tracking had stopped moving, as if she had collided with a tree. Lekin remained silent, his expression grim. Seeing this, the agent proposed a solution. Lekin should go and retrieve her before their meal was finished. The agent continued, gesturing to the glowing, spirit-warding orb and reasoning that its protection against evil spirits should keep the camp safe for a while. Lekin, however, voiced his reluctance, stating that leaving the client behind during an escort mission felt like putting the cart before the horse. He turned to his client, Cheney, declaring that he would only go with his approval. Cheney agreed. The agent then offered Lekin the magical lantern, but Lekin refused, stating that the light from the stars was enough for him. Meanwhile, alone in the oppressive darkness of the forest, Ida had stumbled to a halt, her exhausted form a mere silhouette among the trees. As he began his journey back, Lekin paused. A sense of unease washed over him. Something felt wrong, a premonition that something bad was about to happen. A sudden, sharp gust of wind whipped past him. He realized it couldn't be helped. He would have to splurge a bit and use his power. As that same wind howled violently around Ida, threatening to knock her over, Lekin resolved to act. He noted that, fortunately, Ida possessed strong magical powers, which meant he hadn't lost track of her. He vowed to find her as fast as he could and return. Back at the seemingly peaceful campsite, the stew bubbled and steamed over the crackling fire. Cheney tended to the cooking pot as the shipper's agent stood up, announcing he would check on the horses. The agent's expression was thoughtful as one of the animals whinnied with unease in the dark. The shipper's agent turns to walk away into the darkness when a piercing, glowing eye materializes before him, causing him to stop dead in his tracks with a jolt of surprise. His shock turns to utter disbelief as Lekin appears from the shadows, carrying an unconscious Ida over his shoulder. The agent stammers, questioning how he could possibly be back already, but Lekin simply states that he retrieved Ida and returned. Slung over Lekin's shoulder, Ida's eyes flutter open with a confused murmur. Nearby, the agent and Cheney stare, the former muttering that such a swift return should not have been possible. Moments later, Ida is awake and sitting up, her previous ordeal forgotten. With wide eyes, her first and only thought is food, which she loudly demands from the group. While eating, she apologizes for the trouble, explaining that she was caught off guard by a tree that had appeared in a strange place, an attack that even she couldn't defend against. Lekin adds that she was found surprisingly close by. Later, as the others settle down, Lekin stands alone, looking out into the dark woods with a somber expression. He lies down on the ground near the others, trying to get some rest. He notes to himself that dawn will be arriving soon. However, rest is interrupted as Blue's eyes snap open. His senses flare with a dire warning. A large number of magical beasts are gathering at the edge of their protective barrier. He counts them with alarm. 200. A voice cuts through the quiet, urging Ida to wake up. She stirs, her eyes fluttering open in confusion. Now fully awake, she protests being made to move without eating, but Lekin is firm, ordering everyone to get ready for immediate departure. The reason silences all complaints. He announces that 200 magical beasts are closing in. The shipper's agent, Cheney, holds up a glowing magic stone, confessing his error. He had been told that strong magic stones would ward off beasts, but he forgot that they actually end up gathering them instead. He admits the only option now is to keep moving while the stone's protection against evil spirits is active. Cheney asks Lekin for clarification on his plan. Lekin explains the grim reality. If they continue forward with the stone activated, the horde of magical beasts will simply follow them. To make his point, Lekin poses a chilling question. What would happen if they led such a large number of beasts close to a town? The horrifying image flashes through Cheney's mind, the town's destruction, for which they would be held responsible. The realization strikes him with force. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Cheney agrees to entrust their fate to Lekin. Lekin accepts, stating that they will deal with the pursuing horde once they are off the plains. But for now, they must keep the protective ward active and keep moving. With the plan set, the carriage lurches forward. The horse whinnies, pulling the wagon onto the path leading away from the plains. As they travel along a forest road, Lekin calls out a warning to be careful, noting they will be out of the woods soon. Behind them, the dark forms of the magical beasts continue their relentless pursuit. The full scope of their predicament is revealed. A massive horde of wolf-like creatures swarms the road behind them, a tide of snarling maws and pounding paws. Lekin observes that about half the beasts seem to have given up the chase, but a great number still remain. Just then, perched atop the carriage, Ida spots the pursuing horde and cries out in alarm. She stares at the approaching horde in disbelief, her voice rising in panic. She insists the task is impossible, claiming that even 10 adventurers of her caliber couldn't handle such numbers. Even if the horde were half its size, she cries, it would still be far too many. Her panic escalates as she realizes the village on the road to Vokar would be annihilated. Cheney suggests letting the garrison in Vokar handle the beasts, but Ida immediately rejects the idea, shouting that they cannot. As they argue, Lekin walks past them, his expression thoughtful. He internally resolves to hold off on a decision until he can assess the full situation. Noticing his detachment, Cheney turns to him, asking what they should do. He ignores the question, his focus entirely on the approaching enemy. He notes that, regardless of whether they possess magical stones, the horde is composed only of lower-level magical beasts, not much different from common wild animals like bears, boars, and wolves. With this assessment made, Lekin breaks into a sprint directly toward the beasts. From the carriage, Blue confirms through his life sensor ability that there are no creatures with outstanding magical power among them. Lekin shouts back, telling him to protect the carriage as he heads out. He plunges into the heart of the pack. Under the moonlight, he draws his sword, instantly surrounded by a sea of snarling, monstrous faces. The battle is immediate and violent. Lekin becomes a whirlwind of motion, his blade a silver arc as he engages multiple beasts simultaneously, their growls filling the air. His assault is brutally efficient. He parries a bear-like creature with his gauntlet, sends a boar-like beast flying with a powerful kick, and smashes his fist into the jaw of a lunging wolf. He carves a path through the horde. Steel flashes as he cuts down one creature after another, a blur of focused violence amidst the chaos of snapping jaws and sharp claws. In moments, it is over. Lekin stands alone in the sudden silence, surrounded by the still forms of the defeated beasts. He calmly sheathes his sword, the threat completely neutralized. He finishes cleaning his blade, announcing to the group that it is now safe to deactivate any protections against evil spirits. With a mess of slain beasts dealt with, he sheathes his sword as the merchant, Cheney, looks on in stunned silence. As he turns back, Cheney expresses his amazement, noting that Lekin's sword skills are terrific and that he managed to avoid being splattered with any blood. Ida then steps forward, asking him directly if he used to be a title holder. Before he can respond, her attention is caught by something on his hand. She points out a stylish ring he is wearing and asks to see it, but Lekin gives a curt and simple no. Her focus then shifts again, first complimenting his cool sword, and then complaining about her own scarf. She grumbles that a group of red monkeys relentlessly targeted her the previous night. A sudden realization dawns on her. She understands that her cute, yellow scarf stands out, especially in the dark, making her an obvious target for magical beasts. She shouts in frustration, wishing she had been told sooner. While she fumes, Cheney approaches Lekin with a smile. He thanks him profusely, stating that because of him, they have traveled safely and will likely arrive at their destination by evening. Lekin listens in silence. Sometime later, the group has stopped to eat. Ida, sitting across from him, remarks that he can finally be at ease now. Her words are cut short as he suddenly holds up a hand and orders everyone to stop. The shipper's agent asks what's wrong as Lekin's expression turns serious. He reveals that there are 4 people 800 feet ahead, hiding on both sides of the road. He stands, declaring his intention to confirm their motives and deal with them himself. Cheney and the agent are flabbergasted by his incredible ability to detect enemies at such a range, realizing it must be an ambush. Hearing this, Ida's eyes light up with excitement. She proclaims that it's her turn to fight, eagerly asking if they are bandits. The shipper's agent then turns to a man named Ivan, instructing him to assist if needed, and Ivan agrees. She looked at him in astonishment, questioning if his detection ability was a form of magic. Lekin, however, seemed lost in thought, muttering the word bow. Misinterpreting his focus, Ida became flustered, declaring that she certainly couldn't use magic and telling him not to tease her. Lekin then turned to her, calmly asking for confirmation that she was, in fact, unable to use magic. Having confirmed this, he turned and began walking alone down the narrow, high-walled road, leaving the carriage and his companions behind. He paused a short distance away, issuing clear commands. The carriage was not to move until he gave the all-clear, and if he judged the situation to be dangerous, they were to flee. He noted that the ambushers were almost at 500 feet, the range of his 3D object sensor, and gave a final order to stop, which was acknowledged. As he continued on his way, Ida, now holding her bow at the ready, called out in confusion. He told her to be prepared, but warned her not to shoot, as it would only put them at a disadvantage. Assuring her he would be back, he walked off into the pass. He moved silently into the tall grass at the side of the road, observing the hidden ambushers. He identified a pair of them, one equipped with a bow and the other a sword, and internally acknowledged their skill. Their ability to hide and erase their presence was admirable, not something common bandits could achieve. His analysis continued. Their position and timing meant they had anticipated the carriage's route and had been lying in wait for a considerable time. With this realization, he felt he now understood everything he needed to know. Having gathered enough intelligence, he exploded from his cover in the tall grass. He lunged at the nearest ambusher, an archer, who cried out in pain as he was struck down. A nearby swordsman turned in shock, shouting a curse. The sudden assault threw the bandits into chaos. Lekin moved with brutal efficiency, his blade finding another target who screamed in agony. From a perch on a tree branch above, a third ambusher watched the carnage unfold, cursing in frustration. In response to the threat from above, he unleashed a powerful ability. A tangible blast of wind erupted from him, slamming into the bandit on the branch. The man could only gasp in shock as the force hit him, sending him plummeting to the ground. With 3 down, only 1 remained. The last bandit scrambled through the tall grass in a desperate attempt to flee, but Lekin was already upon him, his sword raised for the final strike. His eye was wide with focus as he closed in to finish the fight. He faces the final bandit, who brandishes a strange, gun-like device. The man realizes it's a magic tool, just as Lekin points a gloved hand forward and unleashes a blast of pure wind. The blast slams into the bandit with concussive force, sending him staggering backward in shock. Before the man can recover, Lekin closes the distance, his sword a blur as he brings it down in a decisive arc, disarming him. Sent flying by the impact, the magic tool hurtles through the air and detonates with a tremendous boom above the tree line. Aboard the carriage, Cheney and the shipper's agent see the explosion and grow concerned for Lekin's safety. His companion's fears are assuaged moments later as Lekin returns, dragging the unconscious form of the last bandit. Ida, having left the carriage against his orders, cries out his name in relief. He calmly reminds her that he had told her not to move. Ida ignores his chiding, asking if he is all right and what caused the explosion. Lekin holds up the broken device, explaining it was a magic tool. He assesses that while the tool itself was strong, he managed because its wielder was only subpar. She's taken aback by his casual assessment. Lekin then adds a crucial detail. The bandits all had the same class of adventurer badge. As he speaks, Cheney and the shipper's agent discuss the captive. They agree to hurry onward and let the local feudal lord deal with the bandit later, deciding against interrogating him themselves. As the men discuss the logistics, Ida examines one of the badges. The shipper's agent observes that since it's not their own, it must be stolen goods or belong to a dead person. Ida comes to a startling conclusion. This is likely a case of adventurers from the organization acting as bandits. With this grim realization, the group sees no reason to linger. They get the carriage moving again, leaving the defeated bandit behind. Lekin quietly inspects one of the adventurer badges, pondering its value now that there is no way to know for certain who it belonged to. After resuming their journey, the town of Vokar finally appears on the horizon. From her perch on the carriage, Ida throws her arms up in celebration, cheering that they have finally arrived at their destination. Her cheer is cut short as the shipper's agent instructs Ivan to go off the road. He explains that his throat is dry and that he wishes to wash his hands and feet at the riverbed to purify himself before entering the town. The carriage veers away from the main path. As the elderly agent observed from the riverbank, Ida splashed gleefully in the water, shouting that she felt revived. Nearby, Lekin stood silently, a cloaked and watchful presence. His attention then shifted from a young warrior washing her face. He called out to Cheney, who remained with the carriage, asking if he wouldn't come down as well. From his seat, Cheney declined the offer. He clutched a wooden box, explaining that he didn't want to let go of it and would therefore pass on joining them. He reaffirmed his decision, then glanced towards the front of the carriage, calling out to their coachman, Ivan. The shipper's agent chuckled at Cheney's cautiousness, remarking that it couldn't be helped. Without warning, Ivan uttered a single word of power from the coachman's seat. A wave of magic washed over the group, causing the agent to clutch his head as Cheney stared in sudden, horrified realization. The spell had worked instantly on the others. Lekin and Ito were now unconscious on the ground. The shipper's agent, fighting the effect, demanded to know what Ivan was doing. Ivan explained that he'd put them to sleep for half a day, before adding with chilling finality that they would actually be sleeping forever. The agent's face hardened with the realization of betrayal. His eyes then widened as he recognized the small, gun-like device that Ivan now held. Ivan aimed the device at Cheney, who was still frozen on the carriage. The coachman chuckled, admitting that he had hidden his ability to use magic. Cheney could only stare, stunned that he didn't know. The merchant demanded to know why. If Ivan could use magic, he surely had more opportunities to earn an income. So why had he become a simple coachman? The coachman, holding his magical device, scoffs at the accusation. From the ground, Lekin's eye glares up at him as he questions the man's motives, asking if he was truly just a coachman for 5 years to earn an income. Lekin calls out his name, Ivan. His face contorts into a wide, unsettling grin. He declares that the man known as Ivan does not exist, revealing his true name is Meraki's. He continues, clarifying that such a farce is child's play for his master, Zykar's. Cheney recoils in horror, recognizing the name cold-blooded Meraki's and realizing the man should have been executed. The truth dawns on him. Zach Zykar's was behind it all. Meraki's looks down at the still forms of Lekin and Ida. He remarks that he's talked too much, but offers the information as a pleasant memory for them to take to the afterlife, lamenting that he must now kill Lekin himself after all the trouble he has caused. As Cheney tells him that's enough, a hand suddenly clamps down on Meraki's arm. To his utter shock, he sees it is Lekin, who was supposed to be unconscious. The magical device is rendered useless as Lekin's gloved hand maintains an iron grip on Meraki's wrist, preventing him from aiming or firing. Meraki's grunts in pain, calling Lekin a bastard and demanding to know why the sleep spell didn't work. Now on his feet and holding his sword, Lekin calmly responds with a simple, "I wonder." He looks down at the struggling man, stating that he has no reason to tell him anything. He adds that, so far, he has only seen Meraki's make errors. With that, Meraki's is sent flying backward with a cry of pain. The man, drunk on his momentary victory, had forgotten that disclosing his own secrets was a clumsy and dangerous mistake. Lekin now stands over the defeated Meraki's, whose weapon lies discarded on the snow. The morning sun rises over the rooftops of the town of Vakar. Inside one of its buildings, Lekin awakens, rubbing the stiffness from his neck. He sits up in bed, the previous day's exertions still weighing on him. After dressing, he makes his way to the common area. From the bottom of the stairs, Ida greets him with a cheerful, "Good morning." She notes that the lodging place, recommended by a local merchant, is quite good. She gestures enthusiastically with a piece of food, exclaiming how delicious the meal is and urging him to come eat with her. As he walks past her to take a seat, she questions his cold demeanor, reminding him that they are comrades who completed a task together. The innkeeper offers him breakfast, to which Lekin quietly agrees. Ida, however, continues her prodding, dismissively asking what he even did, suggesting that at most he just played around with the red monkeys. Ignoring her comment, he takes a bite of the food presented to him, a hearty plate of bread, meat, and a fried egg. He concedes that while the portion is a bit small, the bread and jam are certainly good. He then calls out for another plate, and Ida readily agrees, telling the innkeeper to bring another serving over. The events of the previous day are clarified. Their employer, Cheney, had arrived in Vakar at noon. He immediately handed over their attacker, Meraki's, to the city guards, then prepared these lodgings for his hired protectors and instructed them to wait. Now, seated before them, Cheney thanks them for waiting. He explains that thanks to their efforts, the Cheney Association has returned to its position as the leading merchant for the feudal household of Vakar. Lekin acknowledged the merchant's report with satisfaction, stating he wouldn't pry for details. Ida, however, eagerly expressed her desire to hear everything. Her attention then shifted, and she pointed out that Lekin was not wearing his ring. He internally reflected on her sharp observation. It was that very ring, imbued with resistance to abnormal states and poison, that had allowed him to withstand the sleep spell used by Meraki's. He mused that while she could be clueless about many things, she had a knack for noticing the unnecessary. As Lekin contemplated this, Cheney shifted the topic to the reward. He placed 2 small silver nuggets on the table, declaring that the first payment was for Ida. The merchant's offering was met with immediate protest. Ida stared in disbelief at the 2 silver nuggets, exclaiming that this was not what they had discussed. She reminded him furiously that the reward was supposed to be 5 nuggets, not 2. Her outburst was met with a calm request from Cheney, who asked to see her adventure medal. Flustered, Ida fumbled for the medal hanging from her neck, defensively insisting that it was not a fake. He took the medal and examined it closely. After a moment, he asked if her full name was Edidel, correctly guessing that Ida was merely a shortened version. She let out a loud laugh, confirming his suspicion and adding that her masculine-sounding name was why she was raised the way she was. Cheney simply noted that it certainly sounded like a boy's name. His tone then turned serious. He pointed out a critical detail on the medal. The promotion to silver class had occurred 18 years ago. With a sharp look, he asked Ida how old she was. The pointed question left her speechless. She stammered, unable to form a coherent answer, before letting out a frustrated curse under her breath as both Lekin and Cheney watched her. Her frustration boiled over as she slammed her fist onto the table. Lekin watched her outburst with his usual impassive intensity. She flinches as Lekin forces her to sit, while Cheney sternly reminds her that pretending someone else's adventure medal is her own is a serious crime. As she cries out in protest, he addresses her directly as Ida. Her face flushes with indignation as Cheney continues, asking if she is, in fact, unregistered. She shouts back that the medal isn't someone else's. It's a memento from her father. Unmoved, Cheney explains the reality of the situation. Every adventure organization maintains a wide, interconnected network with local feudal lords and merchants. More detailed information than one might imagine is shared among them, meaning that as soon as an imposter is identified, the news spreads everywhere. The gravity of the consequences dawns on Ida, her expression turning to one of dread. Cheney presses his point, warning her that if she is exposed, she will definitely be unable to register officially next time. Defeated, she lowers her head, clutching her chest and quietly acknowledging that she understands. Seeing her contrition, Cheney softens his tone, stating that out of respect for her father, he will turn a blind eye just this once, but she must not do it again. He slides a small payment across the table for her efforts. With the matter concluded, Cheney turns his attention to Lekin, apologizing for the interruption and preparing to settle his reward. Lekin is taken aback when Cheney presents him with a gold nugget, exclaiming that it's too much. Cheney explains that it is common practice to increase a reward based on performance, and that Lekin's work was certainly worthy of this amount. Realizing the intent behind the gesture, Lekin accepts the payment. Cheney smiles, clarifying that the generous reward signifies his wish to build a favorable and pleasant partnership with him from now on. He then seizes the opportunity, asking Cheney for a favor concerning his future. Intrigued, the merchant indicates that if it's something he can do, he will gladly hear him out. Looking directly at the merchant, Lekin states his request plainly. He wants an introduction to a skilled doctor because he wishes to learn how to make medicine. He listened as Cheney, stroking his mustache in thought, confirmed that a particular doctor came to mind, someone who would meet his standards. The merchant agreed to handle the negotiations himself, asking Lekin to wait a few days. He warned, however, that the doctor was a difficult person who invariably rejected apprentices, but he would at least try to arrange a meeting. He then received a guide from Cheney. Examining the simple map, Lekin confirmed there was nothing wrong with it, yet a sense of unease settled in as he wondered what awaited him at his destination. Following the path, he found himself standing alone in the center of a vast, dark, and empty expanse, bathed in an ethereal light from an unseen source above. The path led him to a specific district within Vakar. As he walked, he realized with a jolt that this was the one place he had actively avoided. An unbelievably enormous magic power emanated from the area, a presence on the same scale as a large maze master, perhaps even stronger. The sheer intensity of the aura startled him, and he looked around, questioning just what kind of person this doctor truly was. His gaze settled on his destination, a solitary wooden house, surrounded by a simple fence and untamed shrubbery. He observed that wooden buildings were a rarity in this town. From his vantage point, there were no visible paths or entrances. Consulting the guide, he understood he needed to follow the fence to its right end. Following the fence line, he passed under an arch formed by overgrown trees and moved through the shadows of the hedges, advancing toward a hidden, inner entrance. He arrived at a simple wooden door. He knew with certainty that the source of the immense magic power was just beyond it. As he raised his fist to knock, a voice called out from within, asking who was there. He stood before the door as the voice from within confirmed it had heard of him and invited him to enter. Stating his name, Lekin, he announced that Cheney had arranged the introduction and that he wished to meet the doctor. As his hand closed around the handle, he braced himself, wondering just what kind of person awaited him on the other side. He pushed the door open, only to be confronted by the sight of a massive, gorilla-like beast crouching just inside. The creature, wearing a simple collar, stared back with wide eyes, letting out a questioning grunt. Lekin, unfazed, held its gaze. Before he could fully process the sight, a new voice called out from deeper within the house, directing him, over here. Lekin's attention snapped toward the sound. A monkey? No, he realized with a jolt. Of course it wasn't a monkey. Heeding the direction, he stepped fully inside the wooden structure, announcing his presence with a quiet, "Pardon the intrusion." His eyes scanned the room, immediately drawn to shelves lining the walls. They were packed with countless jars, bowls, and various medicinal or alchemical tools, a clear sign of a dedicated practitioner. The voice spoke again, its owner now visible. "So you're the adventurer that escorted Cheney." "I see." Lekin turned to face an elderly woman sitting in a chair, her expression weary but observant. She looked him over before stating plainly, "I'm she." Inside a rustic dwelling, the elderly woman known as Dr. Sheila addresses her massive, gorilla-like companion. "Jericho, get a chair for the customer." As the beast moves to obey, Lekin holds up a hand, insisting she not trouble herself. He states that it would be rude to leave a customer standing and formally introduces himself. He stares intently, his mind reeling. This Dr. Sheila, he realizes, is an unbelievable existence, and not merely because of the sheer amount of magic she possesses. The beast, Jericho, lets out a low grunt, and Lekin, startled from his thoughts, offers a quick apology. His internal senses paint a clear picture. The form captured by his three-dimensional object sensor is that of a young woman. However, what his eyes perceive is the distinct shape of an elderly woman. As he sits, the doctor begins by thanking him, acknowledging that he was under her care during a recent event. Lekin, still processing the discrepancy in her appearance, wonders if she is continuously projecting a false image through magic. Her power is so immense that he cannot properly gauge its full extent. Her mention of the recent event makes things click into place for him. He now understands that she was also involved in the matter concerning the merchant, Cheney. With the pleasantries concluded, she gets to the point. She has heard he wishes to learn the techniques of a doctor and asks why he wants to limit his study specifically to healing and magic restoration medicine. Lekin explains that as an adventurer, he often enters forests or mazes for long periods, making healing and magic replenishing medicine a necessity. He acknowledges that most adventurers wouldn't think to make it themselves, but he feels a need to fully understand the things he entrusts his life to. Beyond all the practical reasons, he admits his core motivation with a simple, direct statement. He likes making magic medicine. Dr. Sheila studies him for a moment, her expression unreadable. She notes that he doesn't seem to be lying and accepts his answer, admitting she's interested in the fact that he genuinely enjoys the craft. Having reached a decision, she extends her hand. "Yeah." Lekin agrees, as she asks him to show her the medicine he has made. He presented 2 small vials to the doctor, one containing healing medicine and the other, magic restoration medicine. He noted that this particular batch of restoration medicine was the best he had ever managed to create. As she took one, he clarified that this was not for sale, as he couldn't acquire more and had no intention of selling his current stock. Impressed by the craftsmanship, Sheila asked where she could purchase such a thing, prompting him to demonstrate how to open the unique container by twisting the lid. She brought the strange container closer for inspection, peering at the contents within. She murmured that it was a shame, her expression unreadable. As her finger touched the medicine, a thought struck Lekin. He wondered if this woman possessed the rare appraisal skill, which would allow her to discern the true nature of the potion. Her assessment was immediate and clear. While she couldn't identify the ingredients and had never encountered anything like it, she declared that its effect was undeniably great. She confirmed her understanding that this was the magic restoration medicine he spoke of. Lekin acknowledged her assessment, but was taken aback when she suddenly declared that she wanted him to take an exam. Addressing him by name, she explained her decision. The quality of his potions revealed a serious struggle against his own limitations. While his motivation intrigued her, she needed to test his resourcefulness and endurance to see if he was truly worthy of becoming her apprentice. To that end, she handed him what she called a ministry commission and directed him to the Adventurer Association. He arrived at the association, finding himself in a hall filled with fellow adventurers. He felt a sense of calm, a quiet comfort in being among those who shared his profession. As he stood there, a receptionist called out to him by name, her greeting unexpectedly familiar. She confirmed that she had been told to expect him and asked if he was there to register as an adventurer, to which he hesitantly agreed. He listened as the receptionist explained how she knew of his arrival. A merchant named Cheney had visited the day before, sent by Sheila. Cheney had described Lekin as an incredibly skilled adventurer and guaranteed his talent, asking the association to accommodate him. Lekin reflected that this was the kind of foresight one would expect from a great merchant. She confirmed his name was simply Lekin and introduced herself as Aira, the one in charge. Announcing they would proceed with the registration, she reached for the paperwork, only to clumsily knock a stack of documents off the counter. While Aira gathered the forms, other adventurers milled about the hall. One man stated his age as around 28, while another, when asked about work experience, replied he had none in particular. Aira then turned back to Lekin, asking for his birthplace, to which he simply stated he didn't know. With all the questions answered, Aira cheerfully announced that the formalities were complete. Lekin stood patiently at the counter, his registration finished. She then officially authorized him as a registered copper-class adventurer of the Valkyr Adventurer Association, informing him that his medal would be ready for collection the following day afternoon. His eyes drifted to a large board covered in notices, and he asked if those were the requests. Aira confirmed that they were, explaining that the board was separated by rank, copper, silver, and gold class, from right to left. She added that once he received his medal, he could immediately accept a quest from the copper class section. Lekin listened, taking in the information. As he scanned the board, Era noted that there didn't appear to be any ministry commission requests posted. Lekin paused, his attention fixed on the board. He turned back to her, finally asking what a ministry commission was. Era explained that such commissions couldn't be taken by just anyone. Instead, a suitable commission is chosen for the requester, who must then make a direct application at the reception desk. The system was revealed to be a form of aid. When someone is in trouble but has no money, they can submit a request. A lord provides aid by funding the reward from tax revenue. As there is no profit incentive, the reward for the adventurer is always a single large copper coin. Nearby, 2 other adventurers commented on the system. One noted that while the pay is cheap, many people build up experience through ministry commissions, and completing them is taken into consideration for promotions. Overhearing them, Lekin's only thought was, so cheap. He accepts the terms, understanding this is a shortcut to a silver class promotion. He informs the receptionist he will request a ministry commission when he returns for his medal the next day. With a crisp salute, she confirms his request. The following day, he arrives at the commission site to find an overwhelming scene. A vast, chaotic pile of enormous stone blocks. An elderly man, presumably the client, bows deeply, offering a sincere and repeated apology. Staring at the monumental task, Lekin realizes it seems impossible for any normal person to accomplish in a single day. He recalls the receptionist's briefing. The garden stones of man named Forbeya have crumbled and become dangerous, and failure to clear them will result in a decreased rating. The elderly man, Forbeya, explains the property's history to Lekin. He had purchased this cheap plot of land, which was originally just a dumping ground for a stonemason's excess rocks. Years ago, an earthquake caused the massive pile to collapse. He adds that he had to sell his proper house to provide congratulatory money for his daughter's wedding. He gestures toward the wreckage, explaining that the rockslide destroyed his house and field. Lacking the funds or the method to clear the debris, he was forced to construct a crude roof within a crevice just to have a place to live. He concludes his tale with a sliver of hope, mentioning that he has been waiting for a powerful magic user to arrive and that this is his 12th time issuing a ministry commission request. Lekin, looking at the makeshift shelter, asks in disbelief if that is truly his house. The old man confirms it is, noting that moving such stones would have required both a mason and a magic user for transport. Lekin silently assesses the situation, agreeing internally that the task is indeed impossible without magic. While the old man had been hoping for a small miracle, he had continued to issue countless ministry commissions, all of which ended in failure. He has been living not in a house, but in a mere crevice between the stones. Lekin's expression hardens as he clenches his fists, taking in the full weight of the man's plight. His resolve set, he turns to the stunned old man. "I'll do it," Lekin declares, telling Forbeya to simply stay put. He begins to roll up his sleeve, announcing that he is starting the job. He instructs the man to step aside. Forbeya stammers, trying to warn him that it's impossible to move something so heavy, but Lekin pays him no mind, walking directly toward one of the colossal stones. He braced himself, his muscles bulging with the strain. A muffled grunt escaped his lips as he put his full strength into the task, his teeth clenched in exertion. With a surge of raw power, he heaved the colossal stone block from the ground, lifting it high above his head. His body trembled under the immense weight, a low groan of effort escaping him. Forbeya, the elderly client, could only stare, utterly speechless at the impossible sight. The old man finally found his voice, explaining that all the previous adventurers had given up and gone home, unwilling to perform such heavy labor for a single large copper coin. When asked about the criteria for passing, Forbeya stated simply that the job would be complete when he judged it to be sufficient. A faint aura began to emanate from Lekin's hands. His gaze hardened with resolve, his thoughts a direct challenge to the old man's subjective criteria. He would see this through, daring Forbeya to find his work insufficient. With a strained grunt, Lekin shoves a massive stone block into place, his bare, muscular back taut with the immense effort. He steps back from the newly formed, orderly wall. The elderly client, Forbeya, stares in disbelief, marveling at how tidy the once chaotic rocks have become. Overwhelmed, Forbeya covers his face and weeps with gratitude, stammering his thanks. He realizes that with this, his house and fields can be rebuilt. Lekin, meanwhile, pants heavily, catching his breath after the strenuous labor. Having recovered, he approaches the old man. "Hand me the coin for completing the request," he states plainly. Forbeya readily agrees, placing the payment into Lekin's outstretched hand. Sometime later, back at the Adventure Association, Lekin sits before the receptionist, Era, now fully clothed in his dark coat. He listens as she observes that the job took him 4 days. He simply confirms with a quiet yeah. A quiet moment passes between them. His gaze is sharp and direct, while she looks down, a neutral expression on her face. He breaks the silence abruptly. "Give me the next request." Startled by his bluntness, Era replies, "What?" "Yes, well then." She presents a sealed scroll, explaining that it's a secret request that Sheila insisted she give to him. Upon hearing this, Lekin's expression sours. He declares the request troublesome and asks her to change it. Era quickly reassures him that it isn't dangerous. With a cheerful wave of her hands, she explains that he just has to play with the kids at the orphanage for a whole day. Lekin's eye twitches, his face hardening at the unfamiliar command. He sits in stunned silence, processing the directive. He understands the concept of killing. Though he wouldn't want to, he knows he is capable. But to play, the idea is completely alien to him. He considers the strange request, asking the receptionist if it's possible not to do it today. She cheerfully informs him that since the request is always posted, he can fulfill it at any time. Hearing this, he decides he will do it tomorrow. The receptionist then asks if he will be resting at his lodging for the day. He offers a simple thanks for her work and turns to leave the Adventurers Association. As he departs, a thought forms in his mind. He will go to the forest for a bit. His trip is not for leisure. In the depths of the woods, he unleashes a guttural roar, his arm bloodied as he engages in fierce combat. The source of the conflict is revealed, a monstrous, owl-faced beast. With a powerful thrust, Lekin drives his sword deep into the creature's torso. With the beast slain, he hunches over, panting heavily from the exertion of the battle. Catching his breath, a realization strikes him. He had forgotten his own deep-seated desire to go to a maze. He reflects that his life has always revolved around mazes. Perhaps, he muses, the answer to this strange request can also be found within one. He sits on the forest floor, trying to think back, searching his memories for something that might help him understand the task ahead. Later, outside the church orphanage, Sheila waits patiently. In the distance, Lekin can be seen approaching the building, accompanied by a small group of children. The doctor stands by as Lekin looms over the small children of the orphanage, his large frame casting an intimidating shadow that immediately puts them on edge. Heeding her request to introduce himself, he bares his teeth in what he likely intends as a smile, but his intense features only heighten the children's fear. Sheila explains that the man, Lekin, has come to play with them. The children stare back, their faces frozen in a collective mask of pure terror. Their fear quickly boils over into loud, unrestrained wailing. As one child cries uncontrollably, Sheila sighs, pointing out to Lekin that he has made them cry. Visibly panicked by this disastrous result, he turns away, internally scrambling for a solution. He grits his teeth, declaring to himself that he has a plan and that it's no problem. Sometime later, at the Adventurers Association, Lekin stands before the receptionist, Era. She slides a coin across the counter as payment for his completed task. She informs him that the orphanage was delighted and has requested he come again. Surprised that he succeeded despite his initial reluctance, she asks how he managed it. He replies that there was a hint in the maze. He recalls a past conquest of a jungle-like maze inhabited by small, monkey-like magical beasts. He explains that these creatures would play by tossing the heads of their prey amongst themselves. Era's expression grows puzzled. Continuing his strange explanation, Lekin reveals he fashioned a ball of ivy about the size of a head and gave it to the children. He reasoned that if such a game was fun for magical beasts, it would also be fun for human children. Era can only stare, utterly bewildered. She gently points out that his logic might only apply to boys, as girls typically don't enjoy such things. Lekin is taken aback, realizing his solution was once again rooted in a maze near the shore and that, in this regard, humans and magical beasts are not so similar. He continued explaining his unorthodox methods to the receptionist. He had deduced that since female crab-like magical beasts decorate their shells with flowers to attract a partner, human girls might react similarly. The strategy, he noted, went just as he had predicted. He added that some children even tried to climb on his body, and for some reason, they became happy when he walked around. His experience navigating mazes, he concluded, had come in handy. Finishing his report, he stated that he was not good at that kind of thing and requested a different type of assignment for next time. The receptionist, Era, seemed to have a sudden realization about the request. He found the whole affair anticlimactic, having been prepared for it to last a couple more days. Just then, Era relayed a message from Sheila. He had passed the exam. The news caught him by surprise. As he turned to leave, seemingly satisfied, Era suddenly called out, asking him to wait. She stopped him, expressing that she was glad to see him and had one more request for him to complete. He turned back, questioning what she meant. Era explained that a somewhat strange request had arrived, and to be safe, she wanted to assign it to someone as skilled as him. She revealed that the client was a famous magical beast trainer named Doni from a place called Lumoi Village. The journey led to the remote Lumoi Village, a settlement nestled in the hills and protected by a sturdy wooden palisade. Inside the village, Lekin approached a muscular man carrying 2 large buckets. "You must be Doni," he stated. The man, Doni, looked up, confirming his identity before asking if Lekin was from the association. He stood before the client, Doni, confirming the nature of the job. He had heard the request was to take a magical beast for a walk. Doni affirmed this, specifying it was their given. The swordsman then formally introduced himself as Lekin. The conversation was abruptly interrupted as a colossal, furred foot slammed onto the ground beside him. Lekin looked up as Doni shouted, "Palido! Get down here!" A nearby villager, startled, wondered aloud if the commotion was coming from right above them. In response to the summons, a gigantic, gorilla-like beast landed softly before them. Doni gestured toward the creature with immense pride, introducing him as Palido and instructing him to greet the guest. He assessed the creature, noting its impressive build, even larger than the monkey at Sheila's place. He also sensed its speed, concluding that a direct battle would be a significant struggle. As if sensing the scrutiny, the massive beast shyly covered its face with its hands. Doni then addressed the beast directly, calling its name with a firm yet gentle command. Watching the exchange, Lekin silently wondered if the trainer was using a magically induced order to control the beast's actions. He voiced his skepticism, remarking that such a simple task hardly seemed worth one large silver coin. At that moment, a woman carrying a large basket arrived, apologizing for the wait. She clarified the job. He was to take Palito for a walk to the forest on the other side and remain there until evening. She handed him the basket, explaining it was heavy because it was full of food for Palito. When Lekin asked if the beast might attack people, Doni laughed, calling the idea absurd and assuring him that Palito was a kind-hearted and good monkey. The woman added that the job was tough because Palito eats a lot, forcing him to carry the heavy load while walking. As he listened, Lekin considered using his storage ability on the food once in the forest, all while wondering what dangers he truly needed to watch out for. With the arrangements made, Doni turned to the great beast. His expression grew serious as he gave a final, earnest command. Do as he wishes. Please let Palito. Lekin begins his task, leading the massive beast Palito across a grassy field toward the edge of a dense forest. He internally summarizes his instructions, musing that he is simply supposed to go on a carefree walk. However, upon reaching the treeline, he sits down to observe the beast's odd behavior. Palito seems hesitant, making strange, repetitive motions. Lekin's suspicion grows as he wonders what the creature is trying to accomplish. The great ape paces restlessly at the forest's edge, letting out low, guttural sounds. Lekin notes that Palito has been repeating the same ho vocalization since they stopped. He watches the beast's indecisive movements, realizing Palito is reluctant to go deeper into the woods and keeps trying to return. This behavior, he concludes, is not part of Doni's instructions. The beast hasn't been ordered to perform such a pointless act. Realizing they're making no progress, Lekin gets to his feet, stating that it can't be helped. The beast turns to him, its expression unchanged, and repeats its soft vocalization. He steps forward, his shadow falling over the massive creature. His gaze is sharp and commanding as he prepares to force the issue. In response to the intimidating posture, Palito recoils in absolute terror. The beast's eyes bulge, and it lets out a panicked cry, clutching its head in fear. The creature immediately prostrates itself, adopting a completely submissive stance. Lekin observes this reaction and understands. With this level of ingrained obedience, Palito is likely incapable of disobeying a direct order. His mind flashes through the inconsistencies of the quest. The initial report of a beast that doesn't obey orders, the unusually high reward of a large silver coin, and the massive quantity of food provided for the journey. The pieces click into place. A look of understanding crosses his face as he realizes he has finally grasped the true nature of his assignment. He had made his decision. As the sun dipped below the distant, snow-capped mountains, he turned away from the ominous forest line. With the massive beast Palito following obediently, he walked back through the settlement's wooden gates, the supposed walk now complete. Their arrival did not go unnoticed. Doni, the beast's handler, froze mid-task, a bucket of fruit tumbling from his grasp. His eyes widened in utter disbelief as he stammered, "W.I." The handler's shock quickly curdled into panicked refusal. Lekin calmly stated that the request had been completed and demanded the coin for his service. Flustered, Doni shouted back that he couldn't do that he couldn't possibly hand it over. His gaze remained steady as he asked if there was a reason Doni couldn't pay. Waving his hands dismissively, the handler insisted they try again, stating he'd be counting on Lekin for another attempt tomorrow. But Lekin cut through the pretense, reminding the man he had completed the walk as instructed. He then posed a sharp question. Was the refusal to pay because he hadn't allowed Palito to run away? The handler flinched, the accusation hitting its mark. Stunned, Doni admitted that was indeed the reason. He demanded to know how Lekin had managed to bring the beast back, especially since he himself had given Palito a direct order to run away. Lekin's explanation was chillingly simple. After a brief threat, the gibbon immediately became obedient and submissive. Doni stared, aghast, finding it impossible to believe that their beast would submit to a stranger he had just met, and without the use of a magical whip. He continued, clarifying that while he did threaten Palito into obedience, the beast had desperately fought against the order to flee. Lekin noted that he didn't even have a rope. If Palito had truly tried his best to run, he wasn't sure what would have happened. With all the facts laid bare, Lekin posed the final, critical question. Why orchestrate such a farce just to let one monkey run away? In the silence that followed, Doni's gaze fell upon Palito, his expression filled with sorrow. He knew that if the beast hadn't been so terrified, bringing him back would not have been so easy. His accusation hung in the air. In a heavy silence, Doni's shoulders slumped in defeat. He admitted quietly that even he did not want to lose Palito. Doni began to explain the history of the region's magical beasts. In the past, wealthy citizens of Vakar would keep either gibbons from Lumoi village or timberwolves from Bart's village. While the feudal lord's house always traditionally kept the timber wolf, they would sometimes keep gibbons as well. He continued, recounting that every 10 years, both villages would present their finest magical beast. The winner of the ensuing fight would be offered to the feudal lord's manor. Palito, listening, seemed to question the very concept of these fights. The tradition had lapsed, however, as the timber wolves consistently won, establishing themselves as the customary beast for the lord's house. But recently, the feudal lord visited Lumoi village, expressed his admiration for Palito, and declared his wish to revive the ancient tradition of the fights. In a separate conversation, an elder from Lumoi village confirmed this to Lekin. He stated that the village was in high spirits, viewing the lord's decision as a great honor. Lekin, however, remained silent and unconvinced. The elder elaborated that the renewed rivalry had become extreme. The atmosphere between Lumoi and the enraged Bart's village had devolved into a tense showdown, with each side backing their champion beast. Lekin asked if the two beasts were different. The elder affirmed they were suited for different purposes, but explained that the desire to win and claim the title of purveyor to the feudal lord was so strong that the villages would do whatever it took. He clarified that the timber wolf is a terrifying beast suited for fighting and guarding the manor. The gibbon, by contrast, is good for helping with everyday life. The elder mused that the fight wasn't truly important to the lord himself, who could simply employ workers for such tasks. Returning to the present, Lekin pieced it all together. Doni couldn't disobey the lord, so he hired an adventurer to stage Palito's release to avoid the fight. Doni confirmed this, his voice filled with sorrow, stating he didn't want Palito injured for the village's honor, believing the beast would be happier helping the elderly in households with no men. Lekin's expression softened with understanding. Doni confessed the rest of his plan. He would take the blame as the fool who let the monkey escape, and he had planned to give Lekin the coin once Palito was safely away. He admitted he felt guilty for the deception, which was why he had offered such a large sum of money as a reward. He looks down at Doni, his expression stern, and declares that Doni is mistaken about the nature of pride, stating he could never accept such a notion. He continues, explaining that the situation is the same for Palito. While admitting he doesn't understand how magical beasts feel, he doubts any would be happy if told they were incapable of fighting. His words strike a chord with Doni, who looks up in surprise. Lekin elaborates, suggesting that Doni and Palito must share a strong connection, and that for the beast, Doni is an existence more important than anything else. He continues, his gaze intense, explaining that as a fighter, his greatest happiness will be to fight for the sake of someone like that, a person for whom he is the most important being. He then turns the proposition back to Doni, telling him to try asking Palito directly. As he processes the idea, Doni can only mutter the word fighter. Taking the advice to heart, Doni approaches the massive gibbon. He looks up at the beast and asks, Palito, will you fight for us? For my sake. In response, Palito bares its formidable teeth. The beast lets out a mighty roar, flexing its powerful arms in a clear display of willingness and strength. Lekin and Doni stand before it, witnessing its acceptance. As the roar subsides, Lekin observes the scene. He remarks that magical beasts are indeed fighters, and that Palito and its kind are the best of them. Doni agrees, his gaze fixed on his companion. A realization dawns on Doni. Lekin, turning away, announces his decision. He will send a request to the Association for Battle Training for a magical beast. He turns back slightly, a confident grin spreading across his face as he places a hand over his chest. I'll train him, he declares with certainty. Doni agrees. Elsewhere, over cups of tea, a woman asks another person how the match went, the question hanging in the air outside the walls of an estate. Lekin sips from a cup, his gaze distant. He states that although he didn't witness the fight himself, after training Palito for 10 days, he was certain there was no way the gibbon could lose to a timberwolf. He is speaking with Sheila, who remarks on his strangeness for not watching the match. She confirms that she heard it was an overwhelming victory for Palito. Lekin clarifies that his only responsibility was the training, as the beast's official trainer is Doni. Indeed, after the victory, Doni had appealed directly to the feudal lord. He argued that the timber wolf was more suited for defending the manor, whereas the gibbon was a magical beast that grows close to the weak, making it unfit for such a duty. The lord agreed, assigning the timber wolf as the new guardian beast despite its loss. Lekin acknowledges this outcome. Sheila then muses on the opponent's perspective, noting that on top of a complete loss, having the victory essentially handed over to them must have been a great blow to their pride. He confirms this, explaining that they insisted on a rematch, which was scheduled for 10 years in the future. As a result, requests for Doni's beast training services are now flooding in. Lekin internally marvels at Sheila's influence, realizing Doni must also be one of her personal connections. A slight smile crosses Sheila's face. She shifts the topic, stating that while she heard about his intentions at the association, she wanted to hear the result from him directly. With a look of approval, she declares that he passes, welcoming him as her new, tough-looking apprentice. Across the counter, Lekin's expression is serious and resolute. He formally accepts his new position, looking directly at her and stating, I'll be counted. Inside her home, the elderly Dr. Sheila turns to Lekin, her expression set. Lekin, she announces, we're heading out. He asks where they're going. Sheila reminds him that he came to her to learn how to make medicine, stating that their purpose is, of course, to gather medicinal herbs. Lekin then inquires when they will leave, to which she replies, right now. As they step outside, she adds that the wide variety of medicinal herbs around the town of Aker is one of the main reasons she chose to settle there. Following her lead, Lekin departs from the dwelling, making his way down a path that winds through the lush, overgrown valley. His steps slow as his mind drifts to a familiar riverbed, the very place where the true identity of the one called Merakes was revealed. He finds himself wondering if meeting here, of all places, was truly a coincidence. His thoughts are abruptly cut short. Standing before him is a young woman with long, light hair and dressed in elegant robes, who seems to have appeared from nowhere. The mysterious woman suddenly falters, clutching her chest and doubling over as if struck by a wave of intense pain or exhaustion. She straightens up, her pained expression melting into relief upon seeing Lekin. "Master," she says, her voice familiar. She asks if he knew it was her, then immediately follows up, asking where they will be heading. The truth becomes clear as an image of the young woman and the elderly doctor appears side by side. The young woman explains that she has been able to see him in his true form ever since the first time they met. She reveals her secret. She can use a magic eye. The pieces click into place for Lekin. His eyes narrow in understanding as he finally speaks her name, Sheila. He stares, still processing the revelation of Sheila's true form and her magic eye. She explains that this younger appearance is more convenient for when she leaves town. As he mutters about her ability, she casually dismisses his shock, confirming his observation but stating that it's fine. With the matter settled in her mind, Sheila turns and gestures for him to follow her along the path by the water's edge. Without another word, she breaks into a sprint, her long hair flowing behind her as she moves with unnatural speed. Lekin's eyes widen in disbelief at her incredible pace. He realizes with a jolt that she is not just fast, but is actively accelerating, pulling further away. Remembering her instruction to follow, he resolves not to be left behind. He digs his feet into the ground and launches himself forward in a powerful burst of speed, determined to close the distance. Sheila arrives first at their destination, a lush, overgrown area dotted with ancient-looking ruins. She surveys the area with satisfaction, noting that the growing environment is good. Moments later, Lekin catches up, panting from the exertion. Sheila turns to him, unimpressed by his fatigue, and comments that it was quite a feat for him to have kept up with her at all. He questions her stamina, realizing it must be magic. Sheila confirms his suspicion, explaining she cast Accelerate on herself for speed and Restore to maintain her stamina. She then looks at him with a new appreciation, remarking on the fearsome strength of his legs. As Sheila inspects some plants, she asks why he didn't simply buy them. Lekin recalls his recent labor, mentioning that he had a hard time with Forbea's garden stones and that the task was quite heavy. His attention shifts to a small, round object resting in his glove palm. He examines it, wondering to himself what this medicine ball could be. He looked up, his expression weary as he processed her words about stamina restoration medicine. Sheila questioned his confusion, clarifying that it was her own personal medicine, and reminded him that she never forbade him from using such items. As she turned to walk away, she remarked that she would have to teach him, starting with common sense, addressing him as La Envy. The title caught Lekin by surprise, and his expression hardened as a realization dawned on him. Sheila then explained how her identity was discovered, recounting a conversation with the merchant, Cheney. He had told her that he suspected she was La Envy, an apprentice, and because of that, he wanted her to teach Lekin various things. Her annoyed expression revealed her displeasure at being found out. She admitted to Lekin that it wasn't something she could easily hide, as she had apparently given off that impression a few times. Listening quietly, Lekin concluded that while Cheney seemed like a good person, he was also a cunning merchant who had seen right through her. Later, inside a storeroom lined with countless jars, Lekin reflected that it was for the best his status was revealed, as it made asking questions easier. He resolved to train closely with her. Sheila, however, had a different thought. While Cheney knowing was one thing, she had hoped to keep her secret from the monster beside her. Back in the sun-dappled clearing, Sheila gestured expansively, declaring the entire area a treasury of medicinal herbs. She announced the formal start of his lesson. She would teach him the different types, their properties, and the proper methods for harvesting them. Her lesson began with a warning. She explained that among the beneficial plants were highly poisonous herbs, as well as delicate ones that would lose all effectiveness if handled incorrectly. Tapping her temple for emphasis, she gave him a stern look, commanding him to beat this crucial information into his head. Heeding her instruction, Lekin held up a freshly picked plant, its entire root system intact, and studied it closely. He and Sheila then sat together in the grass, continuing the practical lesson. As they inspected the flora, Sheila noted that this particular place was good. She informed Lekin that they would collect the herbs from night until dawn, the period when their medicinal properties were at their strongest. They both stood, surveying the landscape in preparation. She hands Lekin a bag for collecting herbs, explaining it has a special box attached. She then asks if he has something similar, a container that can hold many things without feeling its weight. Lekin confirms that he does. He takes the bag, looking at it with a puzzled expression. He asks Sheila if it's possible to grant powers to vessels in this world. His question prompts a strange look from Sheila. Wei clarifies he meant attaching powers to humans. She dismisses the idea as bizarre, asking what else one would attach such things to if not a bag or a jar. In response, Lekin draws his knife. With a flash of light from his gauntlet, the blade vanishes completely. The demonstration leaves Sheila stunned, a look of disbelief on her face as she realizes his body itself is a box. Lekin explains that it's a skill from his world called storage, which is granted within mazes. He considers the limits of his ability, admitting he's never tried to empty it completely. Sheila, processing this, asks about its capacity. Could it hold 100 of the bags she gave him? Lekin confirms that it could. Her astonishment grows as she recalls that even his large sword fit inside. She explains that a box with such immense capacity doesn't exist in this world. Furthermore, since others cannot take items from it, the ability would be highly coveted. She sternly warns him not to show this power to anyone else. She emphasizes the danger, stating that people would try to force him into their service just to exploit his ability. Lekin quietly acknowledges her warning. As night falls, they settle by a crackling campfire, preparing a meal. He hands her a bowl, remarking that everything he owns is kept in his storage. Sheila expresses her relief that he thought to include cooking utensils, taking a satisfied taste of the food. She notes that the sun has gone down, and with a simple crossing of her fingers, conjures a small, bright orb of light that hovers in the twilight. Observing this from across the campfire, Lekin points out that she performed the magic without chanting. Sheila casually explains that what she created is a simple spell called Lantern, which is easy for anyone with magical power. His curiosity piqued, he asks why she can't use Lantern herself, despite her immense magical power. Sheila admits that she cannot, explaining that magic is not a skill that can be learned like medicine, but rather something that is granted. She continues, stating that the very structure of magic in her world seems fundamentally different from his. She adds that even if one possesses magic, they likely wouldn't be able to acquire it without dedicated training, leaving Lekin to ponder her words. Prompted by this, he asks how magic is acquired in her world. Sheila explains that magic is a rare ability that is obtained when a person defeats a magical beast. She elaborates that this is particularly true when defeating a maze master. While a person cannot choose the magic they receive, certain beasts are known to grant specific types of magic, leading some adventurers to repeatedly clear the same maze to obtain a desired ability. Lekin processes this, realizing that unlike in his world, anyone here could potentially acquire magic. He mentions his curiosity about the average magical power of humans, noting it seems low compared to his people. Sheila confirms that in her world, what is truly necessary is potential. She affirms his assessment, clarifying the harsh reality of her world. Only those born with a large amount of magical power are able to learn magic at all. Furthermore, those who can use magic will only teach others who already possess this innate ability, establishing a system where one's magical fate is decided at birth. Lekin listens as the principles of magic in this world are explained. For each element, such as fire or wind, a specific corresponding talent is required. Furthermore, the total amount of magical power one can wield is determined by separate aptitude altogether. He processes this information with a focused expression. He turns to Sheila, voicing his conclusion that he might be able to acquire magic simply through training. She considers his words and affirms that she thinks so, too. Encouraged, Lekin asks if she can teach him. Sheila agrees, noting they still have time. She proposes teaching him the lantern spell as an exercise to aid digestion, playfully declaring herself as master for the lesson. Lekin confirms that he understands the structure of the magic, though he still harbors doubts about using a new type. Seeing his resolve, Sheila stands and says, "Well then, let's try it." Following her instruction, Lekin raises his gloved hand and points his index finger into the darkness. He concentrates, attempting to manifest the lantern spell, and a small spark of light flickers into existence at his fingertip. The spark ignites, blossoming into a stable, glowing orb of light that hovers in the air. Sheila, watching from the side, stares with wide-eyed surprise at his immediate success. She expresses her astonishment, admitting she didn't think he would succeed on his very first attempt. Praising his result, she concludes that he must be naturally adept at perceiving how magic works. With newfound confidence, Lekin practices again. He effortlessly conjures another lantern spell, the orb of light appearing instantly and hovering steadily above his finger. Sheila provides further instruction, advising him to practice only the lantern spell for a while, varying its size and distance. She warns that trying to learn other magic types now would be incompatible with his progress. A small smile touches her lips as she thinks to herself how much like a child he is in his eagerness. Under the open sky, Lekin continues his training. He stands opposite Sheila, concentrating as he manifests two separate orbs of light, putting her instructions into practice. He looked up from his work, a wide, almost feral grin spreading across his face as his eyes gleamed with intense focus. In the pre-dawn gloom of the forest, he had moved swiftly from one location to the next, The result of his tireless effort was a massive pile of neatly tied sacks, filled to the brim. Sheila, now appearing as a young woman, expressed her astonishment, stating she never thought he would collect 100 of all 22 types of medicinal herbs by dawn. Lekin stood impassively, replying that he was simply doing what he was ordered to do. He kept his methods to himself, however. He had secretly used a three-dimensional object sensing ability to find the large clusters of herbs and finish quickly, a power he decided to keep quiet about for now. Sheila admitted she had hoped to see him complain, but conceded that his learning the lantern spell made the task manageable. With a curt understood from Lekin, she instructed him to place the bags in his storage and prepare to head to the next location. Without another word, they set off, becoming blurs of motion as they tore through the dense woods. As they ran non-stop from the morning, Lekin finally understood why Sheila had taken the form of a young girl. He realized it would be far too shocking for anyone to witness an old woman moving through the forest at such an incredible speed. The strain of the prolonged sprint began to show on him. Sweat dripped from his chin as he grit his teeth, briefly considering if he should drink the stamina medicine again. Just then, a surge of vigor coursed through him. He realized with certainty that the stamina restoration medicine he'd taken earlier was proving to be extremely effective, renewing his strength for the journey ahead. He continued his run, feeling the strength return to his once heavy legs. The effect of the second dose of stamina medicine was noticeably less potent than the first, a clear sign that he could not use it continuously. Still, it was enough to keep him going for a while longer. Despite the diminished effect, he realized there were no side effects, and his accumulated fatigue was steadily being restored. His thoughts drifted to the jewel Luvi had given him, wondering about its properties. The stamina medicine, however, was different, not a drastic surge, but a consistent recovery. This realization solidified his resolve. He understood that now was the time to absorb every skill he could from his master, Sheila. The knowledge of medicine, crafting, and magic she possessed would become an integral part of his own strength, his very flesh and blood. Their journey took them far into a desolate region of jagged, rocky peaks under a dark sky. They finally arrived at their destination, the dark, gaping maw of a cave nestled within the stone. Inside, Sheila located a large, dark crystalline formation. Inspecting a piece she held in her hand, she confirmed its quality with a satisfied expression, noting that its color was good. She explained to Lekin that the gem would become a very versatile catalyst. Since it was a pain to return to such a remote location, she declared they would take as much as they could, relying on his proud storage ability to carry it all. Following her instruction, Lekin set to work. With a sharp clang, his pickaxe struck the crystalline deposit, breaking off large chunks for collection. After they had mined a considerable amount, Sheila called a halt to their work. She remarked that with such a large quantity, even if she split it with him, his share should last for a few years. With their task complete, Sheila turned to him. "Master," she said, "let me provide the light for our return." In response, Lekin summoned a small, glowing orb, a magical lantern to illuminate their path out of the darkness. He listens as Sheila praises his skill. She notes that his ability to continuously and precisely operate the magical light proves his fundamentals are solid. Based on his quick learning, she muses that it might be fine to skip ahead and teach him other forms of magic. Lekin, surprised but intrigued, quietly asks if she truly means it. As they walk deeper into the cavern, he addresses her with newfound respect, calling her master. Sheila simply acknowledges his statement, knowing he understands. Their path is suddenly blocked by a large, burly man wielding a pickaxe. With a menacing glare and a sinister chuckle, the man declares the mine belongs to him and that their presence is a problem. The man's claim is met with a calm rebuttal from Sheila. She states that while he may have been using the mine for 5 years, she has been using it for over 100. The miner turns his attention to Lekin, questioning him, but Lekin remains silent, simply stating nothing. Ignoring Lekin's dismissal, the man mockingly tells them to lay out their gems. Sheila, however, sees an opportunity. She tells Lekin that she will begin his lesson now, instructing him to watch carefully. She raises a hand toward the hostile miner, her focus absolute. A single word of power leaves her lips, petrified. The man cries out, realizing he is the target of her spell. As the miner freezes in shock, Sheila explains to a stunned Lekin that this is spirit-type magic. She adds that at lower levels, it's not very effective unless one makes direct physical contact. The miner's skin cracks and hardens as the petrification takes hold. Sheila then calmly demonstrates another spell, Dehydrate, identifying it as another special type of magic. She watched as the effects of her magic took hold. The miner, once petrified, now crumbled, his flesh and bone desiccating until only a skeletal figure remained, rapidly dissolving into a pile of dust and sand. His helmet fell to the cavern floor with a hollow clang. With a flick of her wrist, Sheila dismissed the last of her magic, standing over the spot where the man had been just moments before. She turned to Lekin, explaining that if it hadn't been the higher-level Dehydrate spell, the man wouldn't have ended up like this. She added, however, that even an inexperienced, lower-level casting of Dehydrate is enough to take a life. The horrifying truth struck Lekin. The man's body had turned into sand. He stood frozen, the implications of what he had just witnessed washing over him. Noticing his stillness, Sheila advised that it's best to see such things in person, and that if he felt his blood running cold from the magic, he should move around for now. He managed a curt reply, assuring her he was fine. Sheila then gestured to the fallen helmet, asking if he wanted it. Without waiting for a real answer, she changed the subject, telling him to prepare himself as they would be working at her home for several days. First, they would head back to process the medicinal herbs. Lekin silently agreed with her earlier point. Seeing it in person was indeed the best way to understand. His mind raced as he processed the reality of his new master. This woman, who appeared no older than a young girl, had lived for over a century. She was a monster, possessing an immense reserve of magic and the ruthless demeanor required to turn a person into sand in an instant. A chilling doubt crept into his thoughts. In his desire to acquire new skills, had he made an irreversible mistake by apprenticing himself to such a being? The sun rises over the high, tiled roof of a large stone building, signaling the start of a new day. Inside, Lekin rests on a simple pallet on the floor, his eyes closed in sleep. He is suddenly jolted awake by a sound. Sitting up abruptly with his hair now tied in a braid, he calls out with sharp alertness, "Who's there?" The source of the noise is Sheila, who stands at a doorway looking annoyed. "How noisy? Get up already," she shouts. Beside her, the massive gorilla-like beast, Jericho, lets out a startled cry, confused by the commotion. Sheila orders them to go and prepare for the day. Lekin, still sitting on his pallet, rubs the back of his neck as he looks at Jericho. He remembers where he is. He's been staying at Sheila's house to learn how to make medicine. He gets to his feet, remarking to himself that while he's used to sleeping in stables, this is his first time sleeping alongside a monkey. His gaze drifts upward, and he finally understands the building's unusual construction. The ceiling is packed with rows upon rows of triple-layered dried herbs, explaining why the room is so unreasonably high. As he stands there, Sheila's sharp voice cuts through his thoughts. "What are you standing around for?" "We're starting," she snaps, noting with some exasperation that he hasn't even had breakfast. Jericho looks on, seemingly troubled by her tone. The work begins. Inside the vast drying room, Lekin stands on a stepladder, hanging bundles of herbs from the high ceiling. Below, Sheila sits at a long table, meticulously sorting and preparing more herbs. From his position on the ladder, Lekin reaches out an open hand. With a command of pull, a bundle of tied herbs from a nearby barrel flies through the air and into his grasp, ready to be hung. He focuses intently, practicing his newfound telekinetic ability by pulling a bundle of tied herbs towards himself. Observing his practice, Sheila explains that this pull technique is the very foundation of spatial magic. She encourages him to keep at it, noting that if he continues to practice, he might eventually learn the mid-level spell, Migrate. For now, she insists, he must simply repeat the action until it becomes second nature. Lekin acknowledges her words as he continues his work. Sheila then outlines the day's schedule, telling him to move on. After this, he will be making potpourri to ward off magical beasts. She adds that tomorrow he will prepare moss and seeds, so he must finish drying all the medicinal herbs today. The scale of the task is immense. Both he and Sheila work amidst large pots filled with herbs, while countless bundles hang from the rafters above, filling the room with their scent as they dry. Sheila carefully measures a portion of dried herbs. Nearby, the massive beast Jericho stands ready, holding a large barrel for her. The relentless labor proves too much. Lekin eventually collapses from exhaustion on the floor of the storeroom, surrounded by barrels and sacks of finished product. His respite is brief. Sheila finds him and sternly orders him to wake up, reminding him they aren't finished. Lekin groans, muttering that he should have completed his work. Sheila points to a nearby barrel, stating that if they don't sell that potpourri, there will be no room left to stand. Sheila complains that even with an extra pair of hands, her work hasn't gotten easier since she has to teach him everything. Looking utterly spent, Lekin protests that it's absurd. He's been working nonstop for 5 days while also learning magic. He argues that it's unfair to hold him to a monster's standards, then meekly asks if some stamina restoration medicine might be possible. Sheila simply looks at his disheveled state and tells him to at least shave his beard. After their preparations, the trio heads into town. Jericho carries one large barrel on its shoulder with ease, while Lekin struggles with another. Sheila walks confidently between them, leading the way through the crowded streets. They arrive at their destination, a storefront with a sign depicting a mortar and pestle, clearly an apothecary or a general store that deals in medicinal supplies. He and Sheila arrive at a shop where the proprietor greets the elderly woman with immense enthusiasm. The man exclaims that he was just thinking she would arrive soon and invites her in for tea. Sheila, however, declines the offer, explaining that she is short on sleep and wishes to conclude her purchase before heading back. The shopkeeper, acknowledging her directness, also takes note of Lekin standing behind her. Sheila announces that she has 2 barrels of potpourri ready, specifically for warding off magical beasts. The man expresses his delight and gratitude. His attention then shifts fully to Lekin, surprised that Sheila has taken on an apprentice. Sheila formally introduces the young man as Lekin, her apprentice, and states that he will likely be handling such matters from now on, asking the shopkeeper to look after him. The shopkeeper thanks her and examines the product. He notes that the potpourri's water content is still high and advises it be left for a month before selling. He then offers a price, which Sheila agrees is quite good. Lekin stares at the pouch of gold coins in his hand, his expression one of pure astonishment. He internally questions how mere wild grass could fetch such a significant sum. Realizing it's more than just a good price, he voices his disbelief, and Sheila simply confirms it with a quiet yes. She then informs him that they will now visit 4 other places. Nearby, other merchants express their eagerness for Sheila's next delivery. As they walk through the town with Jericho, Lekin asks a belated question. Does the potpourri work on a large beast? Sheila explains that she has cash transformation magic on Jericho, which means the protection against evil spirits has no effect on him. Their rounds continue, taking them to other shops where they are greeted warmly by different merchants, including a man with a prominent mustache and another with a broad smile, all eager to do business with Sheila. Observing these interactions, Lekin comes to a realization. He understands that Sheila has cultivated a special status as the town's doctor. No matter which shop they visit, she is welcomed and treated with politeness, even as the clientele varies. Finally, their work seems to be done. A weary Sheila sighs that they've somehow managed to finish for the day. Standing beside her, Lekin asks if their work is truly over. He stood with Sheila as she informed him that his hard work for the day was done, and they could now head home. She promised that the following 2 days would be for rest. Surprised by her offer, he questioned if she was serious. Sheila confirmed it, suggesting he take a 10-day break. She then recalled his previously stated desire to visit a maze. He gratefully accepted, thanking his master and noting that he would use the time to sleep. Sheila clarified that the break aligned with her own schedule, as it would take about that long for the water content in the dried herbs to go down, with the moss and seeds requiring even more time. The realization struck him with full force. Clenching a fist in excitement, he thought to himself that he could finally attempt a maze in this new world. Behind him, Sheila and Jericho watched his sudden burst of energy. His mind now set on this new goal, he walked through the town alone, contemplating his next move. He decided that if he was going to the Galber maze, he needed some information first. While he didn't want to spoil the challenge by knowing everything beforehand, he at least wanted to understand its basic structure. As he pondered this, a young man approached, calling out to Mr. Lekin. The messenger announced that he had a message from his master. He recognized the man as a clerk from Cheney's establishment. The clerk affirmed this and relayed his master's wish to have dinner with him. The thought of a proper meal was appealing, as Lekin realized he hadn't eaten well for several days. He accepted the invitation. Following the clerk, he arrived at the designated place. Inside, Cheney greeted him with a booming voice and a wide smile, expressing his relief at seeing Lekin looking well. Cheney waved off any concerns, simply stating he was glad that things had proceeded successfully. In response, Lekin apologized for the delay in his report and expressed his gratitude for Cheney's help in securing his apprenticeship and membership in the organization. With the formalities concluded, Cheney gestured to a table laden with a hearty meal of roasted meat, bread rolls, and soup. He warmly invited Lekin to start. At the dinner Cheney had invited him to, Lekin ate heartily while his host poured him a drink. As they ate, Cheney remarked that he also quite liked this establishment. Lekin agreed, noting that the food was indeed good. He then changed the subject, mentioning that he had the Mountain Thief's possession in his storage. Cheney asked if he meant the cylindrical magical tool, and Lekin confirmed he was talking about the weapon that had belonged to the man known as Cold-Blooded Merakis. Cheney mused that the weapon was created by a famous magical tool creator, a close friend of Dr. Sheila's. He elaborated that the feudal lord had bought it through Sheila, or at least that's how it should have been. The merchant then held up a small knife, pointing out that it was still unclear why such a weapon was handed over to an assassin. Lekin denied having that kind of weapon in his homeland, but admitted that something about its mechanism felt familiar. Hearing this, Cheney suggested they show it to Dr. Sheila, an idea Lekin immediately agreed to. With the plan settled, Cheney poured another drink for Lekin, his expression content. But as the drink was poured, a sudden thought struck Lekin, his eyes widening. He questioned internally if he was letting his guard down too much around this man. His mind raced, weighing the facts. Cheney seemed like a good person, and Lekin owed him for his help. But he was also a merchant, and he suspected Lekin was a la envy, a person from another world. He realized he didn't know the true value of the goods he possessed from his previous world. While their relationship was good for now, he understood it could change drastically depending on the perceived worth of what he held. Cheney noticed his pause and asked if something was wrong. Lekin quickly shook his head, claiming he was just a bit dizzy from the alcohol. Internally, he resolved that he couldn't let Cheney know what he was truly thinking. He steered the conversation to a new topic, asking Cheney what he knew about the Galber maze. The merchant, intrigued by the sudden question, leaned forward and prompted him to elaborate. Lekin confirmed his interest, his gaze steady. Putting the previous subject aside, he then asked if maps for the maze could be purchased in Vokar. Cheney confirmed they could and offered to get one for him, an arrangement Lekin quickly agreed to. The merchant admitted that his own knowledge was only general, as he had never personally set foot inside a maze. He explained that maps were indeed sold in Vokar. Even the most basic versions showed the terrain of each floor and the location of the stairs, though he noted that the cheapest maps often omitted this crucial detail. Lekin's subsequent question about the stairs caused Cheney a moment of confusion. Lekin pressed on, asking if one could use them without defeating a floor master. As Cheney clarified that stairs simply lead to different floors, Lekin processed this new information. He realized that better maps must also contain details on the magical beasts that appear within. The mismatched conversation, born from their two vastly different points of reference, continued for a while longer over their meal. But thanks to that exchange, Lekin was finally able to form a fundamental understanding of how mazes function in this new world. Lekin arrives at a sprawling town nestled within a valley of snow-capped mountains. He pauses, taking in a view of the bustling settlement before him. He walks into the town, finding it strange. There's no outer wall, no gate, and no admission tax. He recognizes it as the infamous maze capital, Galber. His attention is drawn to the lively market. A party of 5 adventurers calls out, seeking one more person capable of long-range attacks. Nearby, a merchant loudly advertises his cheap potions and other medicines. Lekin takes in the noisy atmosphere, noting how different it is from his former world, though he doesn't dislike it. His gaze meets that of a stern, armored swordsman from the recruiting party, who seems to notice him. Suddenly, the crowd scrambles to clear a path as a unit of knights marches through the street, shouting for everyone to make way. Sometime later, Lekin sits with a man named Cheney, who warns him to be careful of those men, the Earl of Galber's knights. When Lekin asks if they are strong, Cheney clarifies that they are more of a troublesome bunch who pick fights. He explains that they recently stalked and blackmailed an adventurer to obtain a treasure he had found. Cheney continues, revealing the treasure was an amazing graced sword found in the maze the previous year. The item originated from a time when a noble relative of the Earl fled into the maze and was annihilated. He explains that graced refers to a special effect attached to items from a treasure box, making them incredibly valuable. The adventurer who found the sword was a skilled swordsman who planned to use it himself, which should have been his right, as anything found in a maze belongs to its finder. Cheney scoffs, recounting how the Earl's knights simply overwhelmed the man and forced him to put his own possession up for auction without a proper price, as if it were a mere silver nugget. He expresses his disgust at the act. The armored swordsman from the market, the very adventurer from the story, confirms the details to Lekin. He explains that only those connected to the Earl could participate in the auction. Others were restrained as suspicious persons. Hearing this, Lekin understands the corrupt nature of the Earl and resolves that he will have to be careful. He attempts to slip away, preferring to avoid bothersome encounters outside of a maze's life-or-death confines. Just as he considers finding a back route, a voice rings out, halting him in his tracks. Turning, he finds not an adversary, but a surprisingly cheerful guard named Valker. The guard remarks that it's a great town and that Lekin looks like he can make it big. He encourages him to go earn a fortune, jokingly asking him to drop some treasure on the road for him on the way back. He offers a simple word of thanks. In response, Valker lets out a hearty laugh and enthusiastically wishes him a great adventure. With the guard's boisterous farewell behind him, Lekin joins the massive throng of people funneling into the mouth of the Galber maze, a vast, cavernous opening in the side of a mountain. The crowd is a dense sea of adventurers, a mix of hopefuls and veterans all pushing forward with determination. Within the throng, the armored swordsman and his companion observe the scene. They note that the energy of the crowd rivals that of Valker's shopping district, commenting on how bright and energetic all the adventurers seem to be. Another adventurer nearby overhears, adding that despite hearing about the Earl's terrible ways, he clearly can't control the hearts of the people. The place isn't the horrible pit he'd expected. As Lekin's group moves to enter, the armored swordsman calls out, telling them to wait their turn and that new arrivals should stand at the back of the line. Lekin turns, surprised, as his own companions urge him to hurry so they can begin their first maze in this world. Resigned to waiting, he reflects that this is the first time he has ever had to queue to enter a maze. He glances at his map, confirming this area is the ground floor and that he must descend stairs to reach the first floor proper. Once inside the vast entrance hall, he sees only other humans. Ahead, the armored swordsman's form shimmers with a strange light for a moment. Realizing that magical beasts must only appear from the first floor down, Lekin concludes he must hurry to the stairs. He watches as other adventurers suddenly vanish, only to reappear moments later on the other side of the entrance. He realizes it's not simple disappearance, but some form of rapid phasing or teleportation. He quickly understands the mystery behind it. No one else seems surprised by the phenomenon. It is clearly a natural, expected occurrence for entering this maze. As his party descends the stone steps into the darkness, he notes that, just like the mazes of his former world, his life sensor is unable to penetrate to the lower floors. The scale of this place is far greater than he anticipated. They emerge into a vast, cavernous hall marked as the first floor. The air is still, and the path forward stretches into the gloom. Further in, the cavern is crowded. Another party is engaged with a beast called an Urdu. Seeing the congestion, Lekin politely asks to pass through the battle. As he moves past, the beast abandons its fight and leaps directly at him. With practiced ease, Lekin draws his sword to meet the airborne threat. He finds the creatures, which he mentally dismisses as mere red monkeys, to be boring. After effortlessly felling the beast, he resolves to descend deeper for a worthy challenge. He walks on, contemplating the maze's design. The mazes of his former world were varied, with forests, meadows, and even changes in brightness. He muses that this kind of naturally bland stone maze isn't so bad for a change. Meanwhile, his companion Blue senses something ahead. He detects two magical beasts on the second floor and wonders what kind of creatures they will face. The answer comes swiftly as two massive timber wolves emerge, howling. In the same instant, Lekin strikes, felling one of the beasts before it can even complete its lunge, its howl turning into a final whimper. He glances back as the slain timber wolf vanishes, leaving a treasure chest in its place. "Oh," he murmurs, his interest piqued. After opening the chest, he lifts a small, dark object from within, wondering what it could be. He then pockets his find and continues through the crystalline passage. He pauses to examine the item more closely. It's a bright red, soft, and elastic object that feels like an egg filled with liquid. His inspection is cut short by a desperate shout for help echoing through the cavern. He immediately turns toward the sound. The cry belongs to a young, hooded adventurer who frantically waves his shield at another timber wolf, screaming for it to stay back. Behind him, his companion is down. The adventurer's face contorts in fear as the snarling beast lunges, its fangs bared. His partner on the ground is frozen in terror. With a powerful howl of his own, Lekin drops from above, his boot crushing the wolf's skull and ending its attack in a single, brutal motion. A second treasure chest materializes from the defeated beast. Kneeling, Lekin opens it to find a sword. He studies it thoughtfully. The hooded adventurer, still trembling, thanks him for the rescue. Lekin turns to him, his expression serious. "Oh yeah," he begins, "there's something I want to ask you." The young man is startled by the sudden shift in tone. His mind focuses on the strange object from the first chest. He extends his hand, as if presenting it. The question clear even if unsaid. "What is this?" He presents the mysterious red object to the young adventurer he saved. The hooded youth's eyes widen in recognition, identifying it as a small red potion. When Lekin asks what it's for, the adventurer explains it heals injuries and fatigue. Lekin presses further, inquiring about other types of potions. Hearing this, Lekin simply tells the boy to try it. The young adventurer recoils in shock, protesting that he cannot possibly use such a valuable item on a wound as insignificant as his own. Lekin calmly explains what he has just learned. Restoration potions come in red for stamina and blue for magical power, both available in 3 different sizes. He adds that there are also yellow potions for abnormal states and green for poison, though these are rare. Having processed this information, he clarifies his intent, pointing past the boy. The potion is not for him, but for the severely injured girl lying on the ground nearby. The realization dawns on the young adventurer. With a quick apology, he uncorks the potion and brings it to his fallen companion's lips, declaring his intention to use it on her. He watches intently as the potion is administered. A soft light emanates from the young woman, and Lekin's eyes widen slightly as he witnesses the potent healing magic at work. Moments later, the female adventurer sits up, her injuries completely gone. Her companion turns to Lekin, stammering as he asks how they can possibly repay him. Lekin simply turns away, dismissing the offer. He states that it's fine. He has already received the most valuable thing he wanted, the information about the potion. Deep within the Galber maze, on the 3rd floor, a vast, crystalline cavern unfolds. The chamber is dotted with jagged rock formations, and among them, several groups of adventurers can be seen exploring the treacherous terrain. A faint glimmer catches Lekin's eye. He scans the area, initially thinking there is nothing but rocks around him. His gaze, however, settles on one particular formation. It appears no different from the others, yet he can sense a distinct aura of magical power emanating from it. He realizes this must be the magical beast native to this floor. Reacting instantly, he draws his sword and swings, the blade slicing cleanly through the rock-like creature. The creature's bisected halves wobble and then seamlessly merge back together. Lekin watches, a thoughtful expression on his face. He notes that his cut had little effect, deducing the creature has slime-like properties. Nearby, he sees other adventurers shouting to lure a similar beast and decides to observe their methods for reference. As if on cue, an armored swordsman from another party charges one of the creatures, yelling for it to come over. Meanwhile, a hooded adventurer raises a small blade, beginning an incantation. They ask for power, for flames of rage to be brought down to destroy their enemy. The spell is unleashed, a potent fire arrow that streaks through the cavern and detonates against the rock creature in a burst of intense flame. Following the successful attack, the hooded adventurer and their female companions celebrate with a high five. The spellcaster then declares their intention to claim the magical stone from the defeated beast. As the other adventurers demonstrated that magic was effective against the rock-like creatures, Lekin watched intently. Seeing their success, he concluded it was time for him to use a particular item of his own. He slipped on a formidable piece of equipment, the lightning dragon gauntlet. He flexed his fingers, contemplating the gauntlet's function. It was a magical armament designed to discharge a lightning attack when infused with his power, but he was uncertain if the process would go as planned. Without further hesitation, he channeled his energy and thrust his hand forward. A powerful blast erupted from the gauntlet, striking a rock slime and shattering its crystalline form. A look of satisfaction crossed his face. He mused on the common principle that magical beasts with high resistance to certain attacks are often vulnerable to others. Now that he had confirmed the creature's weakness, he knew the rest would be simple. With a confident cry, he launched himself into the midst of the creatures, his sudden, aggressive move startling the other adventurers who were observing from distance. He moved with fluid ferocity, his long coat billowing around him as he engaged the slimes in close-quarters combat. The thrill of battle surged through him, and he realized with exhilaration that mazes were where he felt most alive. This feeling stood in stark contrast to his earliest, hazy memories. He could not recall his parents' names or faces. His youth was a blur of constant hunger and the harsh treatment of adults. Eventually, he was taken in by an orphanage run by a shrine. The nuns there were known as loving mothers, a title that belied their true nature. They were horribly strict, harsh, and offered no kindness. His memories of the orphanage were bleak. He recalled children being exploited and bullied, and the staff estimating which of them would sell for a high price. Despite this, he acknowledged that the institution provided basic necessities and an education through charity. In retrospect, he concluded it was better than having nothing at all. His mind drifts back to a desolate, snowy landscape. He recalls escaping from an unknown past, only to collapse from hunger and cold, with nowhere to go. It was then, at his lowest point, that he stumbled upon the gaping, tooth-like maw of a cave. At the time, he had found a maze. He ventured inside, his small form swallowed by the immense darkness. Unseen eyes watched him from the shadows as he cautiously made his way down a dimly lit passage, his own eyes wide with a mixture of terror and determination. His caution was warranted. A monstrous, pale-skinned beast with a gaping maw lunged from the darkness, its roar echoing through the corridor. The creature was upon him in an instant, its massive jaws closing around his head. But somehow, he had a weapon. Lying on the stone floor, staring up at his attacker with a wild look in his eyes, he clutched a sword. With a desperate surge of strength, he thrust the blade upward, sinking it deep into the monster's eye. The beast shrieked, recoiling from the blinding pain. He was left standing, stunned but alive, clutching the sword that had saved him. In that moment, alone in the dark corridor, something had awakened within him. The memory jolts him back to the present. His eyes are wide, mirroring the same intensity from his childhood as he grips his knife, the cold steel of familiar comfort. He reflects on that brutal past. While he had few good experiences with humans, the maze had been his crucible. It was there he gained the skills and strength to fight, to survive, and to earn money. Thanks to both luck and the maze he had endured. It was the maze that kept him alive. He believes that while mazes are harsh, they are also fair, a place where true, impartial judgment resides. With this conviction, he steps onto the 25th floor of the dungeon. Deeper inside, he is immediately met by one of its denizens. A massive, multi-eyed worm-like beast lunges, its gaping maw wide. Lekin stands ready, his cloak billowing as he prepares to engage. The battles rage on. He confronts a golden orb-weaving spider, a monstrous arachnid with a humanoid torso. As the creature strikes, Lekin shouts an incantation, summoning the power of wind to aid him. With a powerful overhead strike, he plunges his sword directly into the beast's head, his expression one of cold focus as he ends its life. His efforts have yielded significant rewards. Now on the 26th floor, he observes that the collection bag from the Cheney Association is full, and his sword rests on the stone beside him. He has earned quite a bit. He reflects on his progress, calculating that at his current pace, he could conquer the maze down to its 30th and lowest floor. However, with only one day of exploration time remaining, he considers stopping for now. Spotting another party of adventurers in the distance, he decides it would be a waste to rush through the final levels. He will turn back and return another day to properly finish his exploration. As he makes his way toward the exit, a voice calls out, halting him. Lekin stops, slightly surprised, as a group of armored guards blocks his path. He turns, questioning if they are speaking to him. The lead guard confirms, stating that there is something they wish to ask, and that Lekin must come with them. Without protest, Lekin complies, and the guards escort him through a stone archway, leading him away from the maze entrance. He is escorted to the soldier station, a bustling place where, he notes, adventurers also seem to sell goods from a maze, just as Cheney had mentioned. The clank of armor draws his attention as one of the guards recognizes him by a notorious moniker, the Black-Clothed Demon Lord. Another guard mentions that the captain has already been summoned. Questioning the dramatic title, he introduces himself simply as Lekin. In response, a man in full-plate armor steps forward, apologizing for the summons. He introduces himself as Doug, the captain of the maze's security unit, and asks if Lekin would mind coming to his room. He agrees to the meeting, but requests it be kept brief, announcing that he's hungry. Without waiting for permission, Lekin orders a nearby guard to fetch 10 kebab sticks, an order the guard promptly accepts. Inside Doug's office, the captain reviews a document and gets straight to the point, A number of complaints have been filed against Lekin in recent days. As he listens, Lekin takes a bite of a kebab and comments on its deliciousness, which Doug confirms is a favorite among the security unit. The captain continues to size him up, remarking that he can tell Lekin is a powerful individual who would have nothing to gain from deliberately causing trouble. He calmly agrees, stating he had no intention of causing any trouble. Doug counters that while he may believe that, there are still reports of people being threatened by Lekin on the first and second floors, and the matter cannot be ignored. The captain firmly states that his unit manages all misconduct, as they have a duty to protect all adventurers in Galber. Lekin challenges this notion, questioning if actions like killing and stealing should even be considered crimes within the lawless environment of a maze. Changing his line of questioning, Doug asks if Lekin is from the local area. He confirms he is from the north. After a moment of silence, Lekin acknowledges that he understands the difficult position the captain is in. The captain then elaborates on his reasoning, explaining that many who challenge the maze are young and inexperienced, making them vulnerable. His duty is to protect them from predators, even within the dungeon's confines. He continues his explanation, stating that the feudal lord wishes to create an environment where young adventurers can grow by gaining experience on the maze's upper floors. The captain elaborates that if a clearly stronger person joins in, it disrupts this balance. He acknowledges that while there are some dangerous individuals, everyone is trying their hardest, and he notes that Lekin seems to take care of the younger adventurers. He then brings up a specific incident. Lekin flew over the heads of other parties at the stairs in his haste to reach the lower floors. Lekin listens, understanding that this action caused unease and doubt, making the others question his intentions. Doug adds another complaint, asking if Lekin was also responsible for overhunting the earth grazers on the third floor. He then laughs, remarking that Lekin must have scared them quite a bit. Lekin realizes this is why he ended up being called a demon lord. The captain concedes that he sees Lekin wasn't trying to do anything malicious. Lekin admits that he did indeed hunt a significant number of the creatures, which are a type of slime monster. He agrees to refrain from hunting on the third floor, stating his understanding that people have their own circumstances and that the floor is an important hunting ground for solo magicians needing to make a living. Doug then brings up another difficult point. According to one of the parties, they were so distracted when Lekin passed behind them that one of their members was badly injured. The news visibly surprises Lekin. In response, Lekin places 2 small items on the table, asking Doug to hand them over to the party in question. He confirms that he knows where they're staying in town. Doug's eyes widen in astonishment as he recognizes the items as small red potions, exclaiming in disbelief that there are 2 of them. Lekin calmly explains that one is for healing and the other is an apology, adding that he doesn't mind how they are used. The captain gratefully accepts, saying this will help mediate with the younger adventurers and remarking that Lekin is a good person, not just a strong one. While eating, Lekin says he's counting on Doug to handle the rest. Doug then changes the subject, asking how far into the maze Lekin has managed to get in the 5 days since he arrived, mentioning the 26th floor. He calmly takes a bite of skewered meat as Captain Doug erupts in laughter. Having heard Lekin's answer, the captain expresses his amazement, declaring that reaching the 26th floor is a splendid achievement. Following their conversation, Doug leads him to a merchant's stall. He assures Lekin that while the prices might not be the highest, the merchant is trustworthy and won't swindle him, even offering free appraisals. Lekin confirms that the merchant also purchases goods. The merchant agrees to let Lekin borrow the desk. With that settled, Lekin states his intention plainly. He wants the merchant to buy everything he has brought. After making the arrangement, he turns to leave. In his wake, the contents of his haul begin to materialize on the desk, starting with the clatter of a complete skeleton assembling itself, leaving Captain Doug wide-eyed with shock. The captain stares in disbelief as the pile grows to an immense size, covering the entire desk with a mountain of monster parts, armor, and weapons. He can only stammer, overwhelmed by the sheer quantity of the loot. It isn't just the amount that stuns him. His eyes lock onto a specific sword, a weapon he knows should only appear on the 25th floor. The truth crashes down on him. Lekin truly did reach the 26th floor alone in a mere 5 days. The other adventurers, who had been observing, admit they don't have enough money on hand to purchase everything immediately. Lekin asks if Doug still intends to buy it all, but the captain is still grappling with the impossibility of someone conquering the 26th floor by themselves. Despite his shock, Doug agrees to the sale. Lekin informs him that he will stay in town for the night and return for the payment tomorrow. Doug apologizes for the delay, offers to issue a claim check, and mentions that he also has a favor to ask. Before hearing the captain's request, Lekin has one of his own. He asks for a recommendation on where he can find lodging and a good meal. The fortified town of Vakar stands before them, its sturdy stone walls enclosing the settlement that serves as a vital hub for adventurers challenging the Great Maze. He walks through a stone archway, his mind replaying the recent transaction. He realizes with a grimace that he'd screwed up. Cheney likely meant for him to sell the box he was lent as well. In his frustration, he lost his cool and only sold the goods from a maze. Letting out a quiet sigh, he dismisses the mistake. It can't be helped now. He resolves to simply challenge the maze again, gather better items from the lower floors, and then sell the remaining graced items he'd kept for himself to Cheney. His thoughts are abruptly shattered by a furious shout. A young woman points an accusatory finger at him, demanding to know where he's been hiding. She yells that she has finally found him. She runs up to him, exasperated by his silence. "It's me, Ida," she exclaims, asking if he has forgotten her and reminding him they were comrades on the same job. Lekin remains impassive, stating that he isn't being silent. She is simply a stranger to him. Undeterred, Ida excitedly suggests they team up again, presenting a registration token as proof that she's properly registered and has worked hard. She insists they went on a journey together, but Lekin coldly retorts that she only dragged him down. She persists, claiming that with him on their side, they'd have the power of 100 men. Lekin cuts her off, stating he has no desire to do volunteer work and wants bigger jobs. He then looks at her intently and declares, "You're a magic user." The declaration stops her cold. Ida stares back, utterly bewildered. Lekin advises her to try and learn how to use magic, telling her that she'll be fine if she doesn't have to rely on other people. As he turns and walks away, Ida remains frozen in the middle of the street, muttering to herself in disbelief, "I'm a magic user." Having left the encounter behind, Lekin arrives at a quiet, well-kept building nestled against the town's outer wall, the lodging arranged for him. Inside, an elderly woman named Sheila welcomes him back. She invites him to sit and drink some tea, then asks how far down into the maze he went. Seated at the table, Lekin calmly replies, "Until the 26th floor." He affirmed that he was glad he went to the dungeon, and Sheila, sipping her drink, expressed her contentment with his answer. His mind was already on his next venture. As he told Sheila, he was thinking of going again on his next break and had many things to ask her. But before he could continue, his attention was drawn by a sudden commotion outside. Their quiet discussion was shattered by frantic pounding on the door. A young woman's voice shouted for Lekin, pleading to be let in. Recognizing the voice, Lekin's expression soured, certain she couldn't be there. Sheila calmly asked if he had a visitor. He turned to the door, stating he had no use in meeting her, only for Ida to burst in, demanding to know why he was there and declaring it obvious she came to see him. He snapped at her, but she was undeterred, grabbing his arm and pleading with him to tell her where she could learn magic. Ignoring Lekin's hostility, Ida turned to Sheila, recognizing her as the doctor and introducing herself. Sheila, unfazed by the intrusion, simply told her not to make a fuss by the door and invited her inside for tea. Moments later, Ida sat at the table, praising the tea Sheila had prepared. She explained that she had asked the organization for Lekin's whereabouts. Lekin, however, was blunt. He told her he couldn't teach magic, had no duty to find her a teacher, and that she should go home. Her frustration boiling over, Ida demanded to know why he would tell her she had magical powers if he wasn't going to help. Before Lekin could answer, Sheila calmly interjected, suggesting he teach Ida himself. Ida looked on in shock and hope, while Lekin insisted that was a different matter entirely. Sheila met his objection with a calm, knowing look. She explained that while he was currently mastering one magic after another, his understanding was only at a surface level. She elaborated, explaining that there is much to be learned from teaching others. From a broader perspective, the process of teaching would force him to truly internalize his knowledge, making a shortcut to true mastery. He considers Sheila's words, muttering that if his master says so, then that's the path he must take. Ida, overjoyed, lets out a cheer. Sheila then turns to the young woman, impressing upon her the importance of keeping her magic training secret, a condition Ida eagerly accepts. Seeing her enthusiasm, Lekin makes his offer. In exchange for her tutelage, he will teach her the fire arrow spell. In response to his offer, Ida bows her head low, enthusiastically accepting him as Master Lekin and asking him to take care of her. As she does, Sheila places a gentle, reassuring hand on Lekin's head. He looks down, weary, and quietly asks Ida to stop. Inside a workshop, Ida concentrates fiercely, a bead of sweat on her brow. With a finger pressed to her lips, she mutters the word lantern repeatedly, struggling to grasp a concept. She lets out a groan of frustration, declaring that her efforts are no good. Across the table, Lekin, who has been observing her, questions if this training method will actually work. As Lekin ponders this, Sheila remarks that talented people often have difficulty explaining their innate skills in words. Lekin realizes that his teaching method is likely the problem. Sheila elaborates that while Ida possesses a large amount of magical power and definite talent, she is not yet able to manipulate its core. Ida, undeterred, cheerfully offers to help with their work instead. Sheila agrees, telling Lekin they should finish preparing the current batch of medicine soon to make way for the next season's preparations. Lekin acknowledges her. Following this, Lekin begins carefully decanting a liquid into a series of small vials. Sheila instructs Ida that she can grab the finished batch of medicine, and Ida responds with an enthusiastic, "Got it." A pot of tea and several cups sit steaming on a table, signaling a brief moment of rest for the group. During their break, Ida explains with a pout that she has a commission from the ministry and won't be able to visit for the next 3 days, putting her magic training on hold. Sheila thanks Ida for her help, noting they finished quickly because of her. Lekin also expresses his thanks. Ida advises him not to rush his own training and promises to keep it a secret, prompting Lekin to address her as Master. She then asks if they're taking a break. Her demeanor suddenly shifts to excitement as she declares her desire to go to the maze with Lekin. He reminds her of her ministry commission, but she excitedly presses on, asking if he's heading to the mazes again. Lekin calmly tells her that if she wants to reach silver class quickly, she should do so without taking shortcuts. He adds that reneging on an accepted request would damage her reputation. Sheila gently adds that it's fine to improve at her own pace, then states plainly that Lekin cannot take her to his hunting grounds as she is now. Ida looks down, dejected but understanding. She sits at the table with Lekin and Sheila, listening as Sheila explains that it will be a while before they harvest more medicinal herbs, giving Lekin an opportunity to explore the maze. While Lekin expresses his appreciation, Ida remains visibly dejected, internally lamenting that she is stuck babysitting until she can enter the maze herself. Taking a sip from her cup, Sheila dismisses the need for babysitting, stating she has already taught Lekin the fundamentals and that mastering them in actual combat is better. Lekin interjects, saying there's no need, but expresses a desire to practice high-level magic like fire arrow before he departs. Her memory jogged. Sheila then offers him a farewell gift, a magic restoration pill she created herself. She instructs him to take it with him into the maze, and Lekin gratefully accepts her offer. With his preparations made, Lekin travels onward, arriving at the entrance to the town of Galber. He makes his way through a bustling marketplace, the sounds of commerce and crowds filling the air around him. Stopping at a stall, he explains to his companion, the bald adventurer, that he is planning a trip into the maze for up to 10 days and needs to stock up on non-perishable food. Once his shopping is complete, he departs. The bald adventurer and another man in armor, Doug, watch him go. Doug recognizes him, muttering that he is the infamous black-clothed demon lord. He overhears the whispers, wondering who could be spreading such strange rumors about him. One guard warns another that Lekin's left eye can turn people to stone, while the other remarks that his intimidating presence is just as the rumors described. As he walks away, a voice shouts his name. Lekin turns to see Doug, the security captain, rushing toward him, insisting he has something to talk about. The captain reaches him and immediately apologizes for his rude behavior from the other day. Their conversation continues as they head toward the Galber security unit's guardroom. He sat impassively as Captain Doug explained the reason for his apology. It concerned the time Lekin was held under suspicion, an act Doug now regretted as inconsiderate. The captain mentioned hearing from men named John and Solis that Lekin had saved them and had even provided a red potion to other adventurers. Doug continued, stating that a soldier was on their way, before pleading for Lekin to wait, as the feudal lord had been informed of his presence. Unmoved, Lekin stated his desire to prepare for the maze, suggesting Doug had the wrong person and asking if their business was concluded. The captain insisted, explaining that the lord wished to thank him for selling such an abundance of maze goods. Lekin flatly rejected the notion, stating he had no need for thanks and no business with the feudal lord or his soldiers. Just then, a guard burst in, announcing that Lord Hinget had arrived. Flustered, Doug quickly asked the guard to show the lord to the reception office, then turned to Lekin, pleading with him to let him save face. Lekin simply let out a weary sigh. Having left the security office, Lekin now stood before the gaping maw of the Galber maze. He recalled the soldier from before, noting he had claimed to be the feudal lord's second son. Ultimately, he had declined Doug's offer and chosen to depart. Walking past other adventurers gathering at the entrance, he mused that it was for the best. Inside the maze, he would not have to deal with aristocrats or soldiers. He reviewed his plan. According to the guidebook, the maze had 30 floors. The last time, he had retreated after reaching the 26th floor, but this time, he was determined to go deeper. Clenching a gloved fist, he decided on his first course of action. He would test the new magic he learned from Sheila on the lower floors, ensuring he could use it in combat before continuing his descent. His attention was then drawn to a group of adventurers shimmering with light. He recognized the phenomenon instantly. This was the floor transfer ability Sheila had told him about. As the light enveloped them, he could see it was Sheila and Izak themselves disappearing into the maze. He listens as Sheila explains the mechanics of the floor transfer ability. On each floor, there's a large beast, twice the size of other magical beasts. If he can defeat this beast twice in a row, he will create a mark on that floor. By shouting transfer, while thinking of a marked floor, he can travel there directly. Lekin considers the convenience for his return trip, but decides he will descend through the floors properly for now. Following his decision, he proceeds into the maze, arriving on the 11th floor. The area resembles a sparse forest of towering, pale pillars, where a large, boar-like creature wanders in the distance. The beast, distinguished by its curved snout, senses his presence. In response to its approach, Lekin points a finger and unleashes a fire arrow, which strikes the creature's head with an explosive roar. The impact staggers the beast, creating a momentary opening. He recognizes his chance, focusing his intent and needing his magical power for a more formidable spell. His gaze locks onto the creature as he points his finger forward. A vortex of energy gathers at his fingertip, coalescing into the spell he calls Flame Spear. The spell is unleashed. A massive spear of pure fire materializes and streaks through the air, piercing the beast directly through its head. The sheer force of the impact sends the large creature tumbling backward, its heavy body crashing violently against the stone floor. He stands over the fallen beast, confirming that the spell worked. However, he notes its slow activation time. At this speed, it would be impractical in true combat. It needs to be faster. Having cleared the 11th floor, he descends to the 12th. There, a new threat emerges from the shadows, a massive, flat-bodied albino snake. Without hesitation, he raises his hand once more and unleashes another flame spear, sending the fiery projectile hurtling toward the giant snake. He withdraws his sword from the corpse of the massive, flat albino snake. The creature lies motionless, confirming the kill. Standing over the fallen beast, Lekin reflects on his technique. He acknowledges that while shooting the spell from his finger makes aiming easier, it feels like it's limiting his magical power. Furthermore, although he has shortened the time it takes to knead the magic, the spell is still too slow. His training continues as he descends to the 14th floor. A new foe, a large creature known as a brown furball, immediately confronts him with a deafening roar, its massive maw wide open. Lekin clenches his fist in preparation. He responds instantly, thrusting his hand forward and unleashing another flame spear. The fiery projectile flies true, striking the beast directly inside its gaping mouth. Despite another victory, he remains dissatisfied. He considers if he could shoot out his power as if striking with a sword, but realizes that using his hand as a blade causes both his aim and power to drop. A clenched fist is even worse, taking longer to gather magic. He concludes that he must find a way to cast naturally, without straining himself. His search for refinement leads him deeper into the maze, to the 16th floor. There, he encounters a strange, stationary creature, a small-armed tree. Suddenly, the tree's shadowy limbs lash out from all directions, attempting to ensnare him. Surrounded, Lekin remains calm as a realization dawns on him. He must need his magical power to create a continuous flow, and then release the spell without disrupting that flow. With his eyes wide in concentration, he puts the new theory to the test, thrusting his open palm forward and shouting the incantation for his flames. A powerful blast of energy erupts from Lekin's outstretched palm. He recognizes the technique as a palm strike, a flame spear, and feels a grim satisfaction, knowing it has the perfect combination of speed, power, and aim. The attack was a test, fired down a long, empty stone corridor marked as the 21st floor. At the end of this hall, Lekin now confronts his true target, a colossal, pale creature with a body covered in deep folds and wrinkles. The being, identified as the Wrinkle Man, sits motionless and imposing. He assesses the creature, realizing this must be the large beast required for the transfer. He observes that even while sitting, its limbs are quite long, and speculates that its immense size might be the very reason it cannot stand. Based on his knowledge, he deduces that this magical beast is immobile until it receives an attack. With this understanding, he resolves to end the confrontation with a single, decisive blow, the most powerful flame spear he can possibly create. He roars the name of the technique, Flame Spear, as he begins to gather his power. He visualizes the flow of energy, filling his entire body, concentrating it below his navel, then channeling it up through his torso and into his waiting palm. With a final surge, he unleashes the attack. A blindingly bright and massive beam of pure energy erupts from his hand, hurtling towards the stationary beast. The flame spear connects with devastating force. The Wrinkle Man's tough hide shatters and cracks under the immense pressure, its form disintegrating as the beam tears through it. The exertion takes its toll. Lekin stumbles back with a pained grunt, standing amidst the settling dust and residual energy of his attack. He collapses to one knee, realizing with a start that the single attack has completely depleted his magic. The situation is dire. Fortunately, he remembers the potions he's acquired from treasure boxes. Deciding to use them all, he pulls out a blue potion, though he worries the amount restored won't be enough. He attempts to drink the blue potion, but his body immediately rebels. He chokes, hand flying to his mouth as he gags on the liquid. The violent rejection continues. He realizes with alarm that his body is rejecting the potion, questioning the deeply uncomfortable sensation spreading through him before he retches. Collapsing to his knees, he catches his breath. A thought strikes him. He has another option. He remembers Sheila's medicine and retrieves a small, solid lozenge. As he consumes the medicine, he reflects on the nature of potions. He recalls Sheila's warning. While potions work instantly, due to some special law of the world, they defy nature and cannot be used repeatedly on humans. This is a truth he now understands firsthand. In contrast, he notes that Sheila's medicine isn't immediate, but it will restore his magical powers at a constant, steady rate. He resolves to rest until the next large beast appears, believing he has time. While chewing the restorative morsel, his eyes snap open. His senses have detected something. His brief respite is over. He senses a group of 6 humans clearly aiming for his location, noting that 2 of them are magic users. Having no acquaintances in the dungeon, he immediately classifies them as enemies. Just as he processes this new threat, a deep rumbling sound echoes through the chamber. The supposedly defeated Wrinkle Man begins to stir, its massive form rising once more. Lekin looks on, perplexed. His perplexity gives way to a thrill. A confident smirk spreads across his face as he brandishes his knife, finding the situation interesting and openly challenging the revived beast to attack. The wrinkle man accepts the challenge, lunging forward to deliver a colossal punch. Lekin dodges just in time, the creature's fist pulverizing the stone floor where he had been standing moments before. His boots landed firmly on the stone floor as the group of 6 humans finally reached his position. As he stood his ground, the newcomers announced themselves. A man in ornate armor, flanked by his retainers, identified the group as the party of Lord Tomage Dauga, the heir of the Earl of Galber. With a broad, misplaced sense of authority, he declared that they would assist the honorable warrior in battle. One of Tomage's retainers expressed his confidence in a hooded man, calling him Lord Kimsel. This Kimsel, in turn, announced his intention to unleash an electric shock rain upon the wrinkle man Lekin. Glancing back, watched this display with skepticism, wondering what this was all about. Kimsel began his incantation, raising his staff high. He offered a prayer to his god, Vikam, asking for a sword of judgment to strike down the evil before them. Sweat beaded on his brow from the effort of a lengthy chant. Lekin, however, had no patience for such theatrics. He realized the man was taking far too long to cast a single spell and decided he would not play along with their grandstanding. With that thought, he lunged forward, his own weapon raised, ignoring the party behind him and charging directly at the colossal wrinkle man. He brought his weapon down in a powerful arc, striking the creature's massive form. At that exact moment, Kimsel finally completed his spell, shouting electric shock as magical energy crackled from his staff towards the beast. Lekin's single, decisive blow was all that was needed. The wrinkle man's tough hide cracked and shattered under the impact. Kimsel's magical attack arrived a split second later, striking the already crumbling form of the monster. Watching the beast disintegrate, Kimsel smiled with satisfaction, believing his brilliant attack and spectacular chant were the cause. He smugly noted that the wrinkle man crumbled without the least resistance, completely oblivious to Lekin's contribution. Lord Tomage Dauga and his wide-eyed retainer were equally deluded, praising Lekin's splendid effort in backing up Lord Tomage. They promised his effort would be greatly rewarded. Lekin, standing over the rubble of the monster he had just defeated with a single strike, could only wonder why these people had come here at all. He turns his back on the assembled nobles, internally questioning when he became their backup. Lord Tomage Dauga, watching him, notes the man must be the older brother of a soldier he despises. The noble considers that associating with this supposed heir will likely lead to more unwanted obligations. He states plainly that he was simply fighting his own battle, dismissing their involvement entirely. In response to this dismissal, Lord Tomage loudly proclaims it an admirable display of humility, declaring that he has witnessed the true way of a knight. Lekin, however, is thoroughly unimpressed, thinking to himself, "Give me a break." The scene shifts abruptly to a memory of the 28th floor of the dungeon. A massive, pale, serpentine beast erupts from the rocky ground, its body thrashing with immense power. In the midst of this past battle, he leaps through the air, narrowly avoiding a barrage of sharp projectiles that burst from the ground around him. Landing, he prepares a counterattack. He knows he must use magic, a landslide spell, to locate the creature's core of magical power. With his target in mind, he begins to conjure a flame spear. The serpentine beast lunges from below, its maw agape, catching him off guard and sending him flying. Before he can recover, the creature's thick tail whips around and slams into his side, forcing a grunt of pain from his lips. Twisting in midair despite the blow, he faces the monster and unleashes his flame spear directly into its gaping mouth. Standing over the fallen beast, he leans on his sword to steady himself. He reflects that the magical beasts on the deeper floors are on another level entirely, acknowledging that the last 2 floors were particularly tough. He stands at the threshold of the dungeon's lowest floor, his gaze fixed on the darkness ahead. He knows the master of the maze should be waiting. A single thought occupies his mind. What kind of powerful enemy will appear? The answer comes with devastating force. He is slammed into the stone floor, which cracks under the impact. His body lies still, a dark silhouette against the shattered ground. From a wider perspective, the sheer scale of his defeat is clear. His small, unmoving form lies at the edge of a vast, empty chamber, dwarfed by an overwhelming, brilliant light that floods the space from the far end. Lekin arrives on the lowest floor, a wide, 50-foot-deep octagonal space devoid of any other rooms or passages. His gaze is sharp and focused as he takes in his surroundings, realizing he has finally reached his destination. His boot comes to a stop on the stone floor, just beside a large, fallen form. The sound of his step echoes slightly in the chamber. He identifies the creature as the maze's master, a great ogre. As he watches, the seemingly dormant beast begins to stir, its massive muscles twitching and tensing. Standing over the creature, Lekin issues a simple, firm command for it to get up. His posture is one of challenge, ready for the inevitable confrontation. To his surprise, the great ogre rises smoothly to its feet. Lekin's eyes widen slightly as he registers the creature's fluid movement. Now standing at its full, imposing height, the great ogre faces him. The two opponents stand opposite one another in the vast, empty chamber. Lekin quickly assesses his foe. He realizes this is no ordinary beast. Though it was sleeping soundly just moments ago, it is now completely alert and prepared for battle. He continues his analysis, noting the ogre's incredible musculature and tough frame. More impressively, its nimble body allowed it to rise from the ground without making a single sound. As the ogre takes a deliberate step forward, Lekin offers a silent, sarcastic thanks to the maze god for such a formidable opponent. The beast lunges with shocking speed. As it closes the distance in an instant, Lekin registers its swiftness but also notices a critical flaw. Its body is completely unguarded during the charge. He dodges the initial lunge, but the great ogre's reflexes are terrifyingly fast. It switches from a claw swipe to a kick in the blink of an eye, pursuing him relentlessly. The sheer speed and agility of the massive beast force Lekin onto the back foot. He sidesteps the follow-up attack and drives his blade into the creature's thick arm, attempting to cripple the limb. His blade sinks into the flesh, but with a grimace, Lekin realizes the cut is shallow. The ogre's hide is far tougher than he anticipated. Before he can react further, the beast retaliates. Its stance remains perfectly balanced despite the wound, and it delivers a powerful kick that slams into Lekin's side. The force of the blow is immense. Lekin grunts, acknowledging the creature's overwhelming strength as he stumbles back, catching sight of its thick, muscular tail. He assesses the situation grimly. The ogre has enough power to shatter his bones with a direct hit. Even a glancing blow has shredded his highly durable Bear King's cloak. He notes its incredible physique and reaction time, but realizes its sharp nails pose an even greater danger. The two combatants create distance, circling one another in the center of the vast chamber. The ground beneath them is already cracked from the force of their brief exchange. The standoff shatters as the ogre closes the distance again, this time leading with a swift right kick, a move Lekin wasn't expecting. He's thrown back by the impact, realizing with grim certainty that he cannot win a battle of attrition. If he continues to take damage, he will be defeated. He must seize the initiative and attack, or he will have no chance of victory. Before he can fully recover, the great ogre is upon him once more, unleashing a furious and overwhelming barrage of strikes that fills his entire field of vision. He struggles to keep up with the great ogre's relentless assault. He knows that if he stops moving his hands, he'll be swallowed up. He pushes himself to be faster, but his body is already screaming in protest, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Driven by desperation, he dashes across the cavern, his dark coat flaring behind him as the massive beast closes in. As he runs, his gaze fixes on a new target, the far wall of the chamber. He leaps, planting his feet on the vertical surface and kicking off. In midair, he activates his 3D object sensor, his perception of the space around him sharpening as he twists his body for an attack. Using the momentum from his flip, he brings his sword down in a powerful overhead slash aimed directly at the ogre's exposed arm. But the beast reacts with impossible speed, raising its other forearm to intercept the blade. Lekin grunts with the impact, his eyes wide with disbelief that it was able to block his attack. The force of the parry throws him backward, forcing him to scramble to his feet as the ogre watches, unfazed. He catches his breath, realizing with dawning horror that he couldn't pierce its hide even with a full-body thrust. He wonders just how hard its body is and feels a pang of regret for not having put on the necklace he received from the young lady. A moment of doubt flashes through his mind, a voice whispering that it's impossible. But he forces it down, his expression hardening. No, he can do it. His mind flashes back to a training session with Izak. He remembers Izak noting how good he had gotten at using pull, and that it was about time he taught him the middle-class magic. Lekin had simply asked if that was really the case, watching as Izak demonstrated with a bundle of fibers. He recalls his master, Izak, explaining the fundamentals of a new lesson. Izak described it as a spatial magic, useful in countless situations from combat to everyday life, and in some ways, the most important magic of all. His master then named the spell he was about to teach, Move. As a surprised Lekin watched, Izak pointed his finger, and a swirling distortion of space materialized before him, a direct manifestation of the spell. Sheila explains the core of a specific magic to Lekin. Its only effect, she states, is moving objects toward a desired direction. She then presses him, asking if he truly understands the significance of this simple power. She elaborates that while there are natural restraints when moving things, this magic's true meaning is being freed from the constraint of having to use one's own body to carry objects. As Izak stands by, she advises Lekin to learn it properly while contemplating its applications. Lekin confirms his understanding. His lesson concluded, Lekin now stands within a stone corridor, facing the massive great ogre. The hulking beast crouches, its powerful muscles tense as it prepares to engage him in battle. He focuses his will, and a small, glowing object hovers near his hand. With a silent command, he wills it to move. The object, a pendant, settles around his neck. His gaze is sharp and fixed, his expression one of intense concentration for the fight to come. Across from him, the great ogre lets out a deafening roar. Lekin stands his ground, letting out a sharp grunt as he braces for the inevitable assault. The beast lunges forward, its massive fist hurtling toward Lekin. He meets the blow head-on, his gauntlet forearm intercepting the powerful strike with a jarring impact. As their limbs remain locked, a realization dawns on Lekin. He exclaims that he's figured it out, his eyes fixed on the ogre's enormous arm. But the ogre reacts with desperate speed, its other hand clamping down on Lekin's throat. As he gasps for air, Lekin understands the creature's intent. Though mortally wounded, it plans to take him down with it. The force of the beast's final act of aggression sends Lekin flying backward. He is thrown through the air, clutching a small chest in one hand and his sword in the other, his body reeling from the blow. He tumbles through the air, the treasure chest that was once the great ogre clattering beside him. As he hurtles towards the ground, his consciousness begins to fade. Crashing to the floor, the impact jolts him. With his awareness slipping away, he desperately reaches for a potion, knowing he has only moments. Sometime later, he sits up, catching his breath. He reflects on the danger. If the great ogre hadn't dissipated into a treasure box, as is the rule of the maze, its dead weight would have crushed his throat. The fight was won by a razor-thin margin. He lets out a ragged breath, the pain still evident. From his inventory, he produces a rare item, a gold potion, which he promptly consumes. His thoughts turn back to his adversary. It was a terrifying battle, but he acknowledges the beast as a truly great opponent. He stands, a solitary figure in the silent chamber. The chronicle is now written. Lekin conquered the Galber maze alone. His victory echoes beyond the maze, reaching the nearby town of Vakar. There, Zanjikal, the patriarch of the Zydmore family, offers his congratulations once again for the conquest of the Galber maze. He speaks to Lekin, who sits across from him at a table, with Izak observing from a distance. Zanjikal expresses surprise that Lekin would enjoy a situation where he could have died at any moment, but Lekin confirms that he found the experience quite enjoyable. Curious about the spoils, Zanjikal asks what reward he received from the maze master. Lekin explains that rather than equipment, he received a gold potion. The patriarch's eyes widen in surprise, realizing it is the legendary type of potion said to grant a new ability upon use. He confirms Zanjikal's understanding. The gold potion is valuable to adventurers, but the feudal lord likely has no interest in it. Lekin adds that he heard the same from the security unit's captain on his way back, noting that the captain is a good man, unlike the feudal lord's knights. Zanjikal remarks that it is just like Lekin to have already become acquainted with the captain. Elsewhere in the room, others discuss the matter, concluding it isn't worth fighting a strong adventurer over the potion, and that even if it were sold, another famous adventurer would simply buy it. As their conversation fades, the air fills with the gentle, metallic tones of a musician playing a peculiar disc-shaped instrument. Lekin listens, thinking to himself what a pity it is about the knights. Otherwise, the town would be a great place. The musician plays on, his focus entirely on his craft. He watches the performer, a thought crossing his mind. In his former world, there were also people who sang to their own accompaniment. He decides he doesn't know if the music is good or bad, but it is certainly pleasant to the ear. Taking a drink, Lekin soaks in the feeling of accomplishment, having conquered his first maze since arriving in this world. It feels like a perfect night, he muses, and listening to good music makes the food taste even better. Suddenly, his pleasant reverie is shattered. His eyes fly open in shock. Noticing the abrupt change, Zanjikal leans in, asking what is wrong. Lekin, still staring intently toward the musician, asks what he just sang about. He explains that it seemed like part of a longer story and that he wants to hear what comes next. A bewildered Zanjikal turns to Izak, who calmly advises him to give the musician a tip. The musician continues his performance, his fingers tapping out the melody, seemingly unaware of the powerful effect his song has had on one of his listeners. The song's lyrics speak of Mahazal, the ruler of Wapid. He is described as a miserable old king, a pitiful immortal king. The tale continues, revealing that a dark witch who lives for eternity cast a curse of immortality upon him. Hidden behind his glory, the king does not live, but decays. For countless months and years, he simply rots without dying. The musician's song continued, its lyrics painting the image of a shadowy, robed figure. The name of the witch who brought the country to ruin, the song declared, is the abominable El Sheila. The haunting melody seemed to follow him through the night as he arrived at a secluded house under a star-filled sky. He moved through the darkened interior, his form a silhouette against the faint light from an open doorway ahead. Upon entering the room, he was greeted by Sheila. She welcomed him home, noting that he was awake, and offered to pour some tea. Annoyed by her unannounced presence in his thoughts, he retorted that she should at least knock. A moment later, they both sat quietly, sipping the warm tea she had prepared. Sheila broke the silence, asking how his venture into the maze had gone. Lekin confirmed he had conquered it, but admitted he was saved by a hair's breadth, as the maze master possessed incredible power. Hearing this, Sheila congratulated him, and remarked that there must be a festival in Galber now. He corrected her, stating that his survival was not a feat of his own, but was thanks to the move spell she had taught him. Sheila conceded the point, but maintained that defeating such a foe on a first encounter was still quite an accomplishment. Another silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken thoughts. It was Sheila who spoke first, asking him directly what he had come to talk about. Lekin looked up from the floor, explaining that he had just heard a musician's song in a restaurant. His gaze sharpened as he pressed the issue. He identified the song as being about the witch of the ruined country, and then asked if her real name happened to be El Sheila. Sheila's expression turned thoughtful as she acknowledged that she knew the one he meant. He watched as Sheila's expression softened, a faint, knowing smile touching her lips. Her gaze seemed distant, as if looking back through countless years. She confirmed his suspicion, stating that El Sheila was an old name she was once called by. The elderly woman, Sheila, confirms Lekin's suspicion with a weary smile. She admits to being the one known as the Witch of Wapad, though she adds that the tales have been exaggerated. Lekin's piercing gaze remains fixed on her. He had thought as much, connecting her to the witch El Sheila from the musician's songs. He then asks if she has a reason for inquiring about his knowledge. Surrounded by shelves of bottled ingredients, Sheila explains that she is admitting it so readily only because it is him asking. Had it been anyone else, she would have feigned ignorance. Lekin's expression remains stern as he replies that he is admitting his suspicions so quickly because his instincts agree with the conclusion. He elaborates that while it's not a definitive reason, many things would fall into place if she were indeed the witch El Sheila. In response, Sheila gives a wry smile, remarking on how frightening the lie and are. She confesses that she always had a feeling he would see through her someday, but she is surprised it happened so soon. She then offers to tell him an old story, just for a bit. Lekin remains silent, his expression unchanging as he prepares to listen. Sheila begins her tale, explaining that she was once an ordinary human, the daughter of an aristocrat from a certain countryside. She possessed a talent for healing magic and a beautiful appearance. It had been decided that she would enter the house of Wapad's first prince, but before the marriage could take place, King Mahazal fell in love with her at first sight. As a result, she was placed in the king's harem. She continues her story, recalling that she was content with her life in the harem. The king was an open-minded man, and she felt it was an honor to be under his care. Above all, the king acknowledged her natural affinity for magic. He provided her with the best magic teachers in the land, and she worked hard in her studies. King Mahazal truly wished for her to remain as young and intelligent as she was forever. He handed down a decree, charging the country's sages to find a way to achieve this. In a moment of reflection, Sheila's past self had wished for those happy days to last forever, wondering now if such a thought invited divine punishment. After 3 years, a secret art of immortality was discovered. It was a method that used the magical stone of the ancient dragon, a relic that had been kept at the first king's grave. Sheila continues her tale, explaining that despite her opposition, the secret art was performed. She clarifies that it doesn't extend life, but rather takes it, transforming the subject into an undead being. From that moment on, she was no longer the human girl El Sheila, but the undead witch. As she speaks, Lekin listens in silence, his expression grim and focused. She recounts that King Mahazal was initially satisfied with her transformation. She dismisses the popular song that paints her as being crazed with ambition, revealing the truth. The king also had the art performed on himself, but it failed, leaving him as a rotting, undead corpse. The king's sages had violently opposed this, arguing that Sheila's success was due to her youthful life force and rich magical power, which the aged king's body could not withstand. However, with her transformation as a precedent, the king's desire only grew, and he declared he would be next. Their concerns proved true. The king was reduced to a mere moving corpse, devoid of conscience or memories. As a temporary measure, Sheila and the premier cast control magic on him to maintain the illusion that he was still alive. The situation worsened when the first prince, the rightful heir, died of a sudden illness. This left the king's other son, Prince Salima, who harbored a deep hatred for his father and sought revenge. Sheila reflects that trying to fix matters with such deceit was bound to fail. With no one to oppose the prince's succession, Sheila made a fateful choice. She took Prince Salima aside and participated in the rebellion against the undead king, a decision she now laments, wishing she had punished the prince instead. Her choice plunged the nation into a horrific civil war. The fires of conflict spread across the kingdom, gradually bringing the entire country to ruin. At the end of the war, Prince Salima infiltrated the royal palace. He hoped that by having the king publicly killed, the fractured kingdom could be brought together. As long as the prince was alive, Sheila held onto that sliver of hope. However, after burning the living corpse of the king, Prince Salima took his own life, extinguishing the final hope for Wapad. With the prince's death, the kingdom of Wapad, having lost its king, fell into ruin. The witch who had orchestrated events disappeared from history. Sheila concludes her tale, her voice filled with lingering sorrow as she admits that to this day, she still doesn't understand the prince's final motivations. The story ends, leaving a heavy silence between them at the small wooden table. Sheila breaks the quiet, a hint of self-deprecation in her tone as she asks if he actually believes her nonsensical yapping. Lekin, his gaze steady, replies that while it is a difficult story to believe, it is most likely the truth. He then reveals an ability he has kept hidden, a power to sense humans, animals, magical beasts, and even the magnitude of an individual's magical power. He explains that since the moment he entered the town, he has sensed her tremendous magical power. It was so terrifying, he admits, that he initially mistook her for a large-scale maze master and was therefore cautious about getting any closer. A look of understanding dawns on Sheila's face. So that was the reason for his caution. With the truth laid bare, she asks him directly what he plans to do with her. Lekin simply acknowledges her realization. After a moment of thought, his answer is blunt and simple. Nothing. Her eyes narrow slightly, her expression laced with skepticism as she presses him, asking if he is sure about that. He reassures her that it's fine, explaining that he has no reason to act against her. He frankly acknowledges her power, stating that if he were to fight an undead being like her, there's a strong chance he would lose. But his reasoning goes deeper. His expression shifts to one of intense focus and respect as he declares that she is someone who can teach him the wisdom, skill, and knowledge he needs to learn. He looks at her and names her my master. He looked at Sheila and affirmed that everything she had taught him was true. With conviction, he declared his desire to continue learning from her, stating that was all there was to it. Having said his piece, he stood from the table, explaining that this declaration was the sole purpose of his visit. Sheila let out a small, surprised sound, taken aback by his earnestness. A faint smile touches Sheila's lips as she thanks him. She muses aloud that she never imagined taking on an apprentice, having been prepared for a final battle when he first arrived. Lekin, turning to leave, quietly agrees that it was the same for him. He steps out into the night, apologizing for having disturbed Jericho. From inside, Sheila's voice follows, instructing him to rest the next day, as she will have him begin teaching magic to Ida the day after. The instruction catches him off guard. He had forgotten about that arrangement. Following Sheila's instruction, Lekin sits across from Ida for her first lesson. She struggles, her finger pointed as she tries to form the word for the spell. Lantern. Lekin interrupts her attempt, telling her to forget the spell for now and instead focus on manipulating magic. Frustrated, Ida throws her hands up, asking how she's meant to do that. Lekin begins his instruction. He tells Ida to close her eyes and become conscious of the area below her navel. As he places a hand near her abdomen to guide her focus, he instructs her to imagine a hot mass forming there. He continues, guiding her to breathe slowly and move that mass of heat from her navel to her chest. From there, he explains she must direct it to her right shoulder, down to her elbow, and finally, all the way to her fingertips. He gives the final instruction. Open her eyes slightly, look at her finger, and chant the spell while imagining the heat bursting forth. Ida, concentrating, notes a strange, itchy feeling inside her finger. Lekin observes her progress, realizing she has successfully managed to make her magic flow. With a final push of concentration, Ida feels the heat bursting from her fingertip and shouts the incantation. Lantern. Her incantation is followed by a soft pop, and a tiny, singular orb of light materializes just above her outstretched finger. She stares at it in disbelief before her expression hardens with determination. She decides to try one more time, focusing on drawing power from below her navel as she shouts the incantation again. Lantern. As she repeats the process, Lekin watches with a steady gaze. This time, a much larger and more stable sphere of light ignites on the wooden floor in front of her. Tears well up in her eyes as she stares at the glowing orb. Her hand trembles as she brings it to her face, whispering in awe that it's real, it's magic. The emotional weight of her success overwhelms her as she collapses forward into Lekin's chest. Sobbing, she exclaims that it's magic, the very first thing she has ever accomplished through dedicated study. Lekin, surprised by the sudden embrace, can only utter her name. Her voice cracks with a mix of joy and anguish as she continues to cry, proclaiming that she is now a magic user and not the good-for-nothing she believed herself to be. He remains still, silently allowing her to release all her pent-up emotions as she clings to him, her body shaking with sobs. Sometime later, a composed Ida sits on the floor, demonstrating her newfound ability by conjuring small, floating orbs of light for the massive beast, Jericho, who watches with quiet curiosity. Nearby, Sheila approaches Lekin, commending him on a splendid job. He touches his chin thoughtfully, admitting he isn't sure if he did well and reflecting that the crucial part of the process feels different when explained with words. Sheila's gaze softens as she watches Ida. She tells Lekin that thanks to his teaching, a new magic user has been born and that he has changed the child's life. She concludes by instructing him to continue taking proper care of her. Having accepted his new responsibilities, Lekin's expression is one of quiet resolve. His hair, once shaggy, is now partially tied back in a small, neat braid. Several months pass. In a bustling town square, horses are hitched to covered wagons, signaling preparations for a long journey. Amid the activity, Sheila speaks with a well-dressed man, introducing the two companions behind her as members of her party. The man, introducing himself as Nike, Dr. Sheila's grandchild, confirms that they will be counting on her group to escort them to the town of Pandaroy. The party members in question are revealed. Lekin and a more confident-looking Ida. She holds her hands on the straps of her pack and formally announces their names. Her words settle as their expressions are brought into focus. Lekin's gaze remains sharp and serious, while Ida, now sporting a light smattering of freckles, offers a small, self-assured smile. With the terms agreed upon, the journey begins. The trio, Lekin, Ida, and Sheila, walks out of the town and into the wilderness, ready for the road.